Welcome to the Hero Front Podcast, the 2022 Veteran Podcast of the Year winner. I'm your host, Josh White, and I talk with heroes around the world to inspire, educate, and to remind you that you are not alone. My own personal journey was marked by struggles like depression and alcoholism, which led me to almost lose my life. Now, after years of working on myself, I'm now blessed to say I have an abundance of pride and purpose, and I have made it my mission to share and spread these lessons by having insightful interviews with inspiring individuals, emphasizing trust, transparency, and meaningful conversation to drive positive action in our lives. Above all, I aim to inspire you to unleash your inner hero. We all have it in us, and it's time to bring it to the front lines of our lives. Let's get after it.
And today, the lady that was instructing was like, so I want you guys to sit down and determine how much money it's cost you, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like writing little numbers down. And then I was like, well, I did lose like $700 a month. And then I like multiplied it and I was like, $20,000. That hurt. That was the first time I've ever like looked at how much money I lost because I lost rank. And like,
so when you're adding that number up, were you what kind of time frame were you adding up?
So the minute I lost my stripe, so March of 2022, all the way up until I retire. So I think it was like 29 months or something like that. So I did 700 times 29 and it was like 20 grand. And I was like, oh, this hurts. Like,
I don't mean to make it sting a little more, but if you add your retirement.
I know. Yeah.
Do you have any kids?
No. So I raised my ex's son from 5 to almost 13, but I don't have any communication with him right now. So
Because you're not his biological mother.
Yeah. And my ex and I didn't have like a very easy split. Like we fought pretty much the whole time. So, he used my drinking against me for a while. And that was like before I realized I actually had a problem. And so he was like, well, I don't want you drinking when you have him. And I was like, okay, but you drink every day. He's like, well, I don't have a problem. And I'm like, okay. So the minute he found out I had a drink around his son, wouldn't let me see him again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
And I was honest about it too. I was like, we were in Austria for a basketball tournament for the kids, and he was TDY. And some of the moms were, when you're around people and people are like, oh, you don't have a problem, blah, 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 blah. And then you start like, oh, okay, you know what? You're right. I'm just going to have a drink. He's not going to tell me what to do. So had a couple drinks and got into it with a friend of mine and was very honest, told my ex about it. And the very next day he had one of his coworkers come pick his son up from me.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
My stepson and I were supposed to go to Iceland the day after that, and he didn't let him come with me. Tickets were bought and everything. And I was just cool.
That's devastating.
I saw him a couple times before they left England, like 3 times total in like a year and a half. And then my ex ended up leaving our dog behind. And so I ended up taking the dog back from the people that had it. And it was technically my stepson's dog. And so he went and told my stepson that I took the dog, and that just ruined everything. And they got the dog back, but it just ruined everything.
Oh my gosh. So like between you and your stepson?
Yeah. Yeah. He called me. He was like, he's not your dog. You shouldn't have him. Da, 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 da. He's like, my dad never did this to you. And I was just like, you know what? That's a conversation for your dad and I. Like, we're not going to have you're 13. This is not something that we're going to discuss. And I think that was the last time I talked to him. That was in September or October of 2020. So wow. He just turned 17 in December. So I'm hoping, maybe he'll come around once he turns 18, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, that actually kind of reminds me of my own childhood. I'm not even gonna lie. Like my dad raised me as a single dad for a while.
Okay.
And then when he got married to my first stepmom, He was with her for 10 years, and that's when he had the three half sisters that I mentioned earlier.
Gotcha.
So, um, when by the time they got a divorce, it was really nasty. It was bad. Because like their whole families like lived near Andrews Air Force Base, and like they all worked together at the guard building. And so it was like super awkward, super painful. And basically my family, they didn't flat out say pick them or us, but they kind of, that's kind of what the situation was.
Yeah.
And so I cut my stepmom out of my life because I thought she like basically disrespected my dad, and kind of how like your stepson was talking to you. I
Yeah.
kind of had that same falling out with my stepmom.
Yeah.
She even tried to reach me when I was in Japan. Like I got a letter to my section when I was on the flight line in Japan from her, like trying to reach out to me. This is before like all the social media was a big, easy way to, and I didn't have a cell phone that worked in America. So like there was no real way to
Yeah.
call me. But got a letter to me, which was really trippy. Um, and so eventually I didn't hold it against her. Eventually it was just I didn't emotionally know how to like bring that back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it felt awkward, like that I cut this part of my life out. Like how do I re-engage that? And yeah, unfortunately that I won't ever get the opportunity. She passed away from like an overdose. She blacked out, hit her head, and she
Ah,
and she passed away.
damn.
Um, and I mean, that was kind of an eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And I immediately got close with that family after that because
Gotcha.
I was like, my dad and my step like his third wife, like how they feel about Sherry, that's her name, and her family, like that's on them.
Yeah.
Like I'm a grown ass man. I don't live there anymore. I'm not gonna like carry
Yeah.
that with them when I don't need to.
Yeah.
Um, and so after she passed away, I reconnected with them, like that whole side of the family. Actually, I think there's a picture of, because like you got to remember that like 2 to 12 is what they raised me. So that was my step grandma
Gotcha.
and me.
Oh, that's sweet.
So, and she sent me this like framed and everything. Like they're really happy like when like I was back in their life to some extent.
Yeah.
I say all that. This is your episode. I'm sitting here talking, but
You're good.
I say all that to I think you should reach out to him
Yeah. I
because
want, I think I'm going to wait until he turns 18 just because I don't want any kind of like,
mhm,
it was just not good. Like, I mean, when my ex and I were in England together, like I had a no contact order. Like he went
wow.
that far, like because he didn't want me talking to his son or to him. So it was just like, okay, like it hurt like hell. Um, but you can only do so much.
Yeah.
And I've kind of just, when I went to inpatient, I dealt with a lot of that. That was a lot of what I was really struggling with and just kind of shoved it as far away as I could. But, I've done everything that I needed to do, like for my peace of mind for now. And I mean, that's all I can do. Like it's shitty. It sucks,
Yeah.
but
Okay, well, when he is 18, I would like I was just thinking about myself and how I didn't really know how to make that connection again. I was just too emotionally immature.
yeah.
And so I just ignored it altogether. So it was like that just felt like too much. So knowing how I felt back then, I think you should
Yeah.
reach out to him when he's 18.
I definitely will.
I think it'll mean a lot to him.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big part of his life. Like when my ex and I first got together, he worked an hour away. So I was like the primary person with his son
How
every
many
day.
years did you raise him?
From 5 to almost 13, so almost 8 years.
Yeah,
So
like to not have a good relationship with that person who raised you is not healthy for the kid as he grows up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So
I'm just telling you that from my experience.
I'm hoping and praying that,
Yeah.
one day it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we had this talk just because that's going to happen one day. That's just what my
I
heart's
hope
telling me.
so. I
Yeah.
hope.
I really do. Welcome to Hero Front, the podcast where we spotlight the extraordinary journeys of military service members. I'm your host, Josh White, and today we delve into the remarkable career of Sergeant Martinez. Sergeant Martinez's story began in August 2004, a tale woven with dedication, leadership, and unyielding commitment. Graduating from the Aviation Resource Management Apprentice course in November of 2004, she embarked on a trajectory defined by excellence. Throughout her 19 years of service, she has navigated pivotal leadership roles across squadrons, groups, and wings. Her journey encompasses joint service and special operations, including deployments in direct support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Driven by a thirst for knowledge, she pursued educational milestones, including Airman Leadership School in Germany, an associate degree in aviation management, and a bachelor's degree in organizational management from the University of Arizona Global Campus. From Lackland Air Force Base to Ramstein Air Base, Germany, her assignments have spanned the globe, each stop shaping her into the formidable leader she is today. Adorning her career are noteworthy accolades, including the Air Force Achievement Medal and the Humanitarian Service Medal, a testament to her outstanding contributions and unwavering dedication. So join us as we unravel the extraordinary story of Sergeant Martinez, a true hero whose legacy embodies service, leadership, and excellence. This is her journey, her legacy, and her very intense story that we're about to dive into. So, hey, welcome to Hero Front. Thank you so much, Amanda, for doing this. This has been a long time in the making, and I really appreciate you coming on. So your story really resonated with me, and you had a DUI,
Yeah.
and you were a senior NCO, and that's our worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, I've had literal nightmares about that. You know what I mean? I had nightmares where I'm failing drug tests or getting DUI. Like, they put the fear of God in us that,
Yeah.
hey, if you do this, like, your life is over. They pretty much plant that seed, like, from day one.
Yep.
And you've actually been through it, and you're still here. I was hoping, Amanda, we know what the core message is here, but I was hoping you could speak a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, why you joined.
I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. I am second generation American. My mom's parents are from Mexico, so right at the border. If you've seen the movie Sicario 2, it's based in the city my grandparents are from. So it's not great down there.
Isn't that is that like a crime movie?
Yeah, I think in the movie they kidnap like the president's daughter or something like that.
Oh, snap.
Like the president of Mexico or something like that. But it's based out of that little small town.
Dang.
But my grandparents moved to the States when, like, in their early 20s. They had 2 kids already. They ended up having 12 kids total. So my mom has 8 brothers and 3 sisters. And my mom she ran away from home when she was 17, went to live with my uncle who was in the Marine Corps in Yuma, Arizona, and that's where she met my dad.
No way.
Yeah, so
What made her run away?
her and my grandma did not have a good relationship.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so it kind of went the same way with me and her. I was the oldest of 4 in the house. My youngest sister is 12 years younger than me. And so I took the brunt of everything. My mom has apologized many, many times for how she treated me as a kid.
It's generational trauma.
It still happens. And, I tell her all the time, like, she only knew what she knew. It's not like she knew any better. Now she knows, and she's very careful of what she says around most of us.
Mm.
Just because, like her family is very big on like joking, but really it's like criticizing people. Um,
Right.
so that's kind of the household I grew up in, where it was like, there were always these jokes that were made about like
But really, it
little
was
things.
like a passive aggressive like jab
Yes.
at you that had some truth in their heart behind
Oh,
it.
absolutely. So, we grew up around that. And, the minute I could find a way out of the house, I did. I was 14 when I started working at a grocery store, bagging groceries. And then I just kind of, went to school and worked as much as I could. Um, I'm really close with my sister that's 2 years younger than me. Obviously, like we grew up together, but the other two, um, I left when I was 18. So our relationships are very different because, they're much younger. I think my little sister was, I don't know, 6 or 7 maybe when I left for basic training. Can you hear this dog snoring?
I can't.
Okay, good, because
That's
it's
because he
really
that's because he don't have a damn nose, man. What do we do to them dogs?
it's so loud. So I'm glad you
Why did we
can't.
do? Why did we? Where did we think like, hey, let's make pugs and French bull. Let's take their nose away.
I don't
How
know.
cute would that be? And they're like,
I'm so glad you can't hear him because it's loud. So yeah, so I worked, and then I always had a relationship with my biological dad. It was, back then we didn't have phones like now, so letters and calling to Arizona. I didn't meet him until I was 22.
wait,
Uh,
what?
yeah, so I've never gone to visit him. I got letters and cards and pictures and stuff like that, but I never went to see him. He had
So
2 kids and a wife, and he was busy doing his own thing too.
yeah, so are your sisters your half sisters?
Yeah, so all of them.
All of
Yep.
them. Do they all share a dad?
No. So the two youngest on my mom's side share the same dad, and he's been with my mom since I was 3. So he's my dad. I have his
Okay,
last name. He's been my dad.
gotcha.
Um, and I call him dad. I only refer to him as like my stepdad if I'm talking to people who don't know who he is. When I'm like trying to explain like my family dynamic.
Yeah, I like. I mean, it's hard for me to call my stepmom my dad's third wife, who he's been with, since I was like 14. So for a long time. So she was like the stepmom that's been around the longest in my life, but she's Spanish, so I have to tell people that's my stepmom. Otherwise, they're just like they just keep looking back and forth at us. She doesn't like being called my stepmom, but I'm like, look, I just say that to just like prevent 5 minutes of explanation.
Agreed.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, he's been with my mom since I was 3, and he is, we tell my mom all the time, like he's a saint. And my mom's like, y'all just don't know him the way I know him. He's not a saint. He's not perfect. I'm like, in my eyes, he's perfect. So, when him and my mom got together,
She's like,
we
I don't think he's all that. I don't know what y'all see in him.
exactly. She's like, I'm trying to get rid of him. Um, well, when they got married, we asked him, like, well, what are we supposed to call you? And he's like, well, what do y'all want to call me? And we were like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, y'all can call me dad if y'all want. And we're like, okay. And so, like, he raised me and my sister, that's 2 years younger than me,
Wow.
with, I mean, no complaints. He worked hard. He's still working. I'm going to retire before him, my poor dad. But, he is very calm. He's the very complete opposite of my mom. So my mom
I
is
mean, that's
very
how it always is.
crazy all the time, and he
Mm.
can be when he wants to be, but for the most part, like he's super chill. But he spent a lot of time when we were kids working, sometimes 2 jobs to support us because there were so many of us.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so when my mom was hitting me and yelling at me or whatever, he wasn't ever really there. So, as soon as I could, like I said, start working, I started working.
Real quick about your biological dad. Have you met him at all in your whole life at this point?
No,
Still.
no, I met him when I was 22.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Could you just quickly, I'm just curious, like how and why did that happen at 22?
It's crazy. So I was stationed here at Ramstein in 2008. Um, and from 2008 to 2010, and I was in a C-130 unit, and they were doing a TDY for 2 or 3 weeks in the States, and it was to multiple locations, and I just got picked to go on the TDY. I was a senior airman, and one of the locations was Yuma, Arizona, and
Mm.
my dad has lived there, since before I was born. He was in the Marine Corps for 8 years and then stayed there. He was a firefighter, and I just messaged him on MySpace because MySpace was in back in the day, and
Man,
just said, "Hey,"
that top eight just hit different.
and hitting the music. The music was good
The
too.
music was, oh my God.
Really tell the mood.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're putting a message out to the world what you're all about with that song that you chose.
for sure. But yeah, so I just sent him a message and said, "Hey, like we're coming into town. I'll be there for a week. I'd like to see you and the family." And he was like, "Absolutely." And go figure, right before I leave, work problems, right? My GTC was expired. And I needed to
Classic
overnight.
senior airman move right there. Man, if you got a senior airman or a new staff, I'll bet my life on it. They don't have a current GTC. And
I
the day
was
they find out is the day you try to send them somewhere, and they'll be like, "What's?"
honestly, that's exactly what happened. So I had to
And then the
call him.
conversation goes to, "How do we expedite it? I know there's a way to expedite it. How do we do that?" I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation.
We expedited it to his house. And so the night that we got to Yuma, him and my sister showed up to the hotel with my GTC so I could pay for my
That's the
hotel.
most senior airman story I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was our first meeting. I was 22, and it was different. It was like I didn't really know him. Like, yeah, we'd had conversations, but we'd lost touch throughout the years because, I joined the Air Force and I was overseas, and I just
So he has a
didn't.
whole new life, whole new family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, are they like really squared away, or are they like struggling? Like, what kind of vibe did you get?
Um, no, I think they're squared away for the most part. My sisters are, I think they're 2 and 4 years younger than me. Um, but like Yuma is not a big place. Like Yuma, Arizona is tiny, and it's very like it's not like Dallas where I grew up, like big city. It's very like small town vibe, like very simple. They're outdoorsy people. I did not grow up that way. So like my dad would go hunting and fishing, and like him and my sister took trips and did stuff like that. Like every year they'd go like elk hunting and stuff like that. And that's not something I grew up doing. Like I live in the city.
Why did
So
he check out so quickly?
I think because him and my mom had a lot of issues. Um, yeah, we're gonna go with that.
Okay.
Um, because
As
I'm
as a parent, like I just hate hearing like when there's like a distant parent. I hate that. And
yeah,
my stepsister, her name's Kelly. So my third stepmom's daughter, with a different guy from he was an Air Force guy, her dad, and yeah, he started a new family and like
yeah,
basically never talks to her. Like I remember her talking to him like maybe like once a year.
yeah.
Now that I'm a parent, I'm like, what the hell is that's weird to me.
I think too, like times were just so different then, like now it's so much easier to keep in contact with like anyone because of the technology we have. And like for me, all I had was writing letters, and then if he took the call, or if my mom let me call him. And usually when he and I would have a conversation, my mom would somehow find a way to kind of intervene, and then they'd get onto something, and then I would lose the conversation. So
So like they would just start catching up.
yeah, well, they just start arguing about something.
They started arguing.
Yeah, because it was like I wanted to go visit, and like it just was never a good time, I guess.
Wow.
So
But you
yeah,
did
I
get
don't
to meet
know.
him that one time.
Yeah, I mean, we have a relationship now. Um, he's not married anymore. He actually lives in San Diego. And
Another Marine spot.
yeah, my his dad was in the Navy and stationed there at Coronado. So that's where he grew up. And we have a relationship now. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but
Mhm.
it's nice to know like that half of me, because I didn't really know anything. So I've seen him probably a total of 5 times in my life, maybe.
So it sounds like you've had some traumatic episodes in your life too.
Yeah, for
Because like
sure.
when you're growing up, like you think that that's all normal,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And then when you join the military and you tell certain people the story and they're like, their reaction is like, what?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think even me telling you right now, I'm kind of like, oh, this sounds really messed up. Like,
Right. Yeah. And so I think that affects us more than we realize. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I come from a equally, you know, crazy childhood as far as like the relationships go, the divorces. And I mean, I even found out my grandfather on my dad's side had another family, like a secret one.
that's crazy.
Yeah, they like 5 years ago they met their half brother for the first time.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yes, and he looks like my grandpa. My grandparents are passed away now. I guess my grandma like caught him. So like this is back in the day. My grandpa was a comm airman and he went TDY a lot to the coasts because they had some different type of communication set up over there back then. And he started another family over there. I mean, this is like before internet, before like you
Uh,
could get away with that back then. You could forge some documents and boom, you got two families now. And she found out I guess my grandma found out and basically gave him an ultimatum. So he just cut that family out forever.
wow.
So it wasn't until both of them passed away that my family felt that it was okay to reach out to that family.
Yeah.
But now
Wow.
now they love the guy. I think his name's Rocky. He actually looks like my grandpa, so that's kind of trippy.
Yeah.
Um, his name's Rocky. He looks like my grandpa. He looks like a great guy. Like they love him. They see him once a year now. Like they invite him to like their little mini family reunion every year.
Oh.
But that's just to show you how bizarre things can get,
Yeah.
right?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
Okay, so let's go into joining the Air Force. We know you're just looking to get out, move somewhere, do something new. You just got to get out that house,
Yeah.
start your own life.
Yeah. So, really the only reason I decided to join was because I needed to leave. I know you read some of my stuff. I had a cousin that I was very close with who had osteosarcoma, so she had bone cancer. And I spent a lot of time with her, before she was sick. But we basically moved from South Texas to Dallas area because my aunt and my cousins were there. So, I mean, we spent every Sunday at their house. We were with them all the time, went to church with them, spent holidays with them. And then she ended up getting diagnosed with bone cancer. So, spent a lot of time with her in the hospital. I can tell you, I remember my sister and I going and watching Titanic at the hospital with her when it was still on VHS on two
Mhm.
different tapes. And that hospital room was so cold and we slept on the floor because there was nowhere for us to sleep.
They don't make it. I hate that they do that, but they don't want you staying there. So
No,
they don't put anything comfortable there at all.
Yep. So we made it work. And then she went into recovery. They basically did a whole hip replacement after they shrunk the tumor. She went into remission. And then she ended up getting sick again. And it was during my freshman year that she had gotten sick the second time. And I shaved my head because she was going to lose all her hair. So that was kind of like, it wasn't really traumatic for me. Like, it was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm doing something like, to help make her not feel like she's alone. But it wasn't easy in schools. My freshman year, people made fun of me, people had jokes, and it was whatever. So I spent my entire high school years growing my hair back. And she ended up passing away in November of 2002. So I was in my junior year at that point. And she passed away right after her 26th birthday. So
Damn, it sounds like you were real close with her.
yeah, I was. It's really hard. Like, I feel like another reason I joined was because she really didn't get to do a lot. I mean, she got diagnosed with cancer when she was 21 and then passed away when she was 26. So it was like, I need to do something because she didn't see anything. She didn't get to go anywhere. So I feel like a lot of it was like, I'm doing this for her. Like, I'm going to get away from everybody and away from, this life and build my own life. So yeah, so I was already talking to a recruiter shortly after that. And my recruiter is amazing. I'm still Facebook friends with her today. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have joined, honestly. You have people that tell you like their recruiters didn't tell them the truth, or like, they lied to them or whatever. She was 100% honest with me. And, my mom was used to like recruiters, I guess, like in like the 70s and the 80s, where like you call your recruiter for anything, like when my uncle was in the Marine Corps. And so like my mom would get mad at me and like kick me out and be like, call your recruiter to pick you up. And I'd be like, well, oh, okay. Like, oh, you want to go to a football game? Call your recruiter to take you to the football game. And I'm just like, all right. So I did. And my recruiter came and got me. Like, she was there. So, she helped me. And I almost backed out. The summer before I left, I graduated in May and I moved back home because I moved out on my 18th birthday. So I moved back home just to spend time with my sisters. And
I'm still listening. I'm just
I
trying to
know
fix this sign, but I
I
can still
saw
hear you.
flashing. Yeah, so it's on now.
Try not
You
to
good?
kick that cord. They're barely holding on down there. There's about to be a fire. There's a fire hazard going on right now, y'all.
So you're daisy chaining over there is what you're
Daisy
saying.
chain. Yeah, that's my call sign.
So yeah, so I almost backed out. My mom was like, you can stay here, we'll help you, you can go to
Your mom
college.
was trying to talk you out of it?
Yes. She was like,
Yo, she's hitting you with that codependency.
she was like, we'll help you. She's like, but you're gonna have a curfew and you're still gonna file. And I was like, F this, I'm out. Like, I am not.
Horrible, horrible salesman.
Yeah, she
Horrible
was like,
sales. She's like, oh my
you can
God,
have
we
whatever
we
you want,
will
but you're gonna be in
we'll
trouble.
make you feel so comfortable. We'll please just stay. But I swear to God, if you're late one more time before curfew, like you're done. You understand? You're like, see ya.
And it wasn't easy living there. Like, um, my parents, like, they had all these strict rules in place. Like, if I wanted to do anything, I had to ask at least 3 days in advance. So if something popped up,
Damn, you were ready for the Air Force then.
it was like, you don't ask 3 days in advance, you're not going.
That's like
Like,
leave.
and my mom would be like,
You had to put in leave.
seriously. And my mom would be like, oh yeah, you can go here. And then I'd go, and then she'd call and be like, you're not supposed to be there. You need to come home. And I'm like, what? And so like I didn't really like have uh like a high school like a good high school time. Like, it was like I went to school, I went to work, I took care of my cousin, and then like that was it. Um
Wow.
and then I mentioned in the article, I did get pregnant when I was 17. So shortly after my cousin passed away, I got pregnant. I was so stressed out because I didn't know how I was going to tell my parents. Um, I just kept thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm repeating exactly what my mom did. Like my mom ran away. My mom got pregnant at 18. She had me at 19,
It's a
like,
generational trauma catching
and
up to
I was
you.
so stressed. And within a couple days, I ended up having a miscarriage, and it was in the middle of the night. Um, Nobody knew except my youngest sister and one of my really good friends. And eventually, my younger sister, that's 2 years younger than me, she was the one that told my parents that I actually was pregnant because I couldn't tell them. Like I was terrified. Um,
I don't blame you. I mean, if you can't even go leave your house, now you're
no.
gonna tell them you're pregnant? I mean, that would just blow their minds.
And it's crazy. I can remember one day telling my mom, like, I was getting ready to go to work, and I said, "Hey, mom, I need to tell you something." And she goes, "What? Are you pregnant?" And I was like, "No." Like, it was like weird. I was like, "Oh man, I got to go to work. Like, I got to get out of here." And then shortly after, I mean, wasn't within a week, I had a miscarriage, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know.
How did that go down that night? Is that like how did you know that you
Oh,
had a
I woke up
miscarriage?
like excruciating pain.
Hmm.
17, you wake up in the middle of the night, just like a sharp pain. And then I just went to the bathroom until everything passed and went to
Wow.
sleep. So I just, I didn't know what I was doing. My friend was like, she had just had a baby, and she was like, "You can hemorrhage, like you need to go to the hospital." And I was like, I can't go to the hospital. Like I cannot tell my mom this is happening right now.
So you
Um,
would rather risk your life than
yeah.
tell your parents.
Yeah. And I mean, now that I look at it like that, it's like, what the heck was I thinking? Like, there's no way I would never let one of my sisters do something like that. Um, but I didn't know what to do. Like, I was
Yeah.
just,
Do you think the
you know,
stress is what caused that?
oh, absolutely.
The
Absolutely. I
fear, the
mean,
anxiety.
yeah. I just kept
Wow.
thinking to myself, like, I'm literally doing the exact same thing my mom did. Like, and then like, I was like, what am I going to tell like my kid, right? Like, my boyfriend works at Sonic. Like this is just like not ideal for me. So that just really solidified like me leaving. I was like, I've got to get out of here because if not, like,
So like you had a close call in your mind and
yeah,
you're like, hey, if I don't leave now, something else is gonna stop me
yeah.
from going.
Literally that same week, my mom and I had gotten into a huge argument, and this was after the miscarriage. So like within that same week, all of this just like boom, boom, boom. My mom and I had gotten into an argument, and she started hitting me, and I can remember being on the ground and pushing her off of me. And she called the police and told them that I hit her.
What
And
the f
yeah, so I went to
Oh my
jail.
God.
Yeah.
So they
Um,
they they took her word for it and then cuffed
oh,
you?
my mom told my sisters, like, if you guys don't tell them that she hit me, if they ask, y'all are going to be in trouble. So, of course, the police officer did not care a word I said. He just walked into my bedroom and said, "Stand up, turn around, and put your hands behind your back." And I didn't have shoes on, nothing. I was sitting there like red, crying.
So you're
And
still about to not go in the Air Force.
yeah, yeah. So, I had already, talked to my recruiter and stuff. So, had to tell my recruiter that I had gotten arrested. In Texas, it's a Class C misdemeanor, so it's on my permanent record because at 17 in Texas, you're an adult. Um, you kick the thing again, get it
It's
together.
barely in there. Yeah. Oh, it's fine.
So yeah, it was rough. That week in itself was. I mean, I was 17, and literally just like everything happened that could possibly happen in that week.
That
Uh,
is just awful.
Yeah, so I was like, I've got to get out of here.
So that
So
misdemeanor didn't stop you from being able to go?
no, I will say it came up in basic training. I had to sign an affidavit saying like, yes, I was arrested. I will never lie to the Air Force again. Um, but
It's so
I
the security clearance part probably
yeah,
where that came back.
yeah. So I was super lucky. I was just like, I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't show up. I didn't know. And they were just like,
Who was your recruiter?
I don't even know what she did. I feel like she was weapons or something, but
Oh,
she ended up staying a recruiter until she retired. Like she
oh
was a
wow.
recruiter for a long time. So
Are
she
you
was
still
just,
in touch with her?
yeah,
That's amazing. I reached
yeah,
out to mine too. Mine, I'll tell you when we're not recording my story.
yeah.
Again, we have something else in common. Um, but yes, my recruiter came through for me
Yeah,
hardcore. Her name was Zenaida Long. She's from Puerto Rico,
nice.
and she was like a little firecracker too. You know, like the Puerto Rican that's full of energy and
Yeah,
is just like super confident, and it's just like your friend from day one. She's
yeah.
like that. Um,
I
her
was
name was
lucky.
uh her name was Senior Master Sergeant Zenaida Long, and I did reach back out to her like when I was in for about I don't know 10 years or so, and I was like, I'm still in. Like, thank you for helping me all those times. And she was like, oh my God. She remembered me. She was super happy I was still in. So yeah, we
Yeah.
don't all have horrible recruiter stories. Some of us have
No,
good ones.
she was great. Honestly, like I, being able to keep in touch with her too has been, great. She's got two kids. Um, I have nothing bad to say about her. Like she was great. Um, and she kept me from backing out because I almost did. I almost was like, nope, I can't leave my sisters again because I'd left and lived with my uncle in South Texas for a couple months when I was 14. Because my mom and I just couldn't get along. Like I was getting hit all the time and getting yelled at all the time. And so I ran away. And the very next day after I went back to my aunt's house, I had a plane ticket to go down to South Texas. And I was like, all right, guess I'm leaving. And 2 months later, I went back up to Dallas because I missed my sisters. So I was living with an uncle and an aunt that didn't have kids and, very different dynamic. So
Yeah.
the minute I
So
had the opportunity
the
to go
reason
back,
you were questioning leaving was you already knew what it felt like to leave your sisters.
yeah,
And you're like, I don't know if I could do that forever.
yeah. And honestly, my sister that's 2 years younger than me, she held a little bit of resentment because I left. Um, and it took her quite some time to tell me, but eventually she was like, "You just left us here," and I
Yeah.
was just like, "What was I supposed to do?" Like, I couldn't stay there in that environment. Like, it was time for me to go. Um,
I
and
don't think people realize like how hard it is to leave.
yeah,
And we forget because we've been in for a long time now, but I mean, it is not easy. You're literally leaving your entire life, everything that you've ever known. And there might be people that relied on you or needed your help, and you're not there anymore. You've started your own journey and you can't be there.
yeah. My
Um,
sister and I slept like in the same bed for years. Like we had twin beds, and then we were like, we don't want these, and we just got like a full size bed and slept in the same bed together because that's how close we were. And then I just left. And then of course
yeah,
my first assignment was overseas, so that didn't make it any easier.
mine too.
Yeah,
Yep. And then you don't have enough money to like call them and you definitely can't pay for a plane ticket. You got to wait till you're done with the assignment, and then you get that free
yeah,
trip. Um,
yeah,
but oh my gosh, yeah, it's like it was such a and you do feel guilty, when you miss weddings, when you miss like your nieces or nephews being born,
yeah.
when you miss funerals, and the whole family's grieving and you're not there, you miss all of it.
Now
Um,
that I'm about to retire, like my sisters are stoked. Like my sister that's 2 years younger than me, she was like, I haven't said anything to you yet because I wasn't planning on moving back to Dallas. And she was like, but this is really selfish of me, but I really want you to move back home. And then she just had a baby 4 months ago. And now my other sister, that's the next one in line, she just found out she's pregnant. So like I don't want to miss any of that anymore. Like
right.
my oldest nephew is 16. Um, and then I have a niece
Wow.
that's 10 and now the new baby. So, I've missed a lot of their lives and it sucks. Like
Yeah.
decided to go spend some time with them for a while.
Yeah, I had a childhood best friend who yeah, I knew my sisters were starting to get into that like wild child mindset, especially because of all the divorce stuff.
Hmm.
And I was from, Waldorf, Maryland. There's a lot of drugs and a lot of like if you want that, it's there. Um, and me and my best friend, we had the biggest falling out. Like he ended up dating my sister. Like I told him to basically watch over my family and
Yeah.
be like the big brother because I wasn't there. And he ended up dating one of them. Uh, and like I'd come home on leave and they'd be like, they would know each other so well, but they wouldn't want to tell me. It was such an awkward thing. But so some tension was being built, but where it really got bad, and there's something I've held on to this day, was his mom died of cancer, and I never wanted to be home. So his parents were like my adopted parents. I was there more than my own house. I think they knew as parents, hey, this kid's probably got something going on. So they just let it happen. They let me spend the night there all the time. They fed me. They got a grocery list for me. And so his mom passing away was like super depressed. Like it was very sad for me too.
Yeah.
And when I went back, like the falling out that happened where it was never the same again. Well, for one, I found out I was dating my sister. So I was pissed about that.
Yeah.
But then he was pissed at me because the 1 year anniversary of his mom's passing, they were gonna all have this memorial, and I was too scared to go. And so I
Wow.
pretended like I forgot. And I hate myself to this day for like not doing it. It was because of alcohol. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't do if I wasn't hammered, I couldn't do anything that
Yeah.
emotionally challenged me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I acted like I was hungover and I forgot. And he blew up on me. And part of what he brought up was like, you left everybody. Like we
Wow.
were all left behind. We had this problem that like some truths came out. And I was
Yeah.
like, and yeah, I haven't talked to him since. That was
Wow.
like, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Dang.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
This is the type of stuff that happens when you leave out of like overnight and never come back.
My sister and I, we didn't talk for years, um, just because, we'd lost that bond we had once I left.
You start to you both become different people, so at some point you become strangers to your own family.
Yep.
So you don't know what to even say to them.
No. Yeah, we lost touch for quite some time. Now we're all like kind of on the same page. A couple years ago, I went home and we all went to go eat and we kind of made a pact and was like, we're not going to let anything come between us anymore. Like, we're all adults. We're going to talk to each other if we have an issue with someone. We're not going to talk about each other to other people. Like, so, that's nice to have that now because we didn't have that before. So,
I'm very happy to hear that. And I'm
yeah.
so excited and thrilled for you to be going back into their lives like when they need you, they still need you. They have these kids now. Like you're an aunt.
That's what my sister said. She's like, I want you to have the relationship that we had with our aunts when we were little. And that got me. I was like, okay, coming
Yeah.
back. So
The stepmom that passed away that I didn't get to reconnect with,
yeah.
her sister was my Aunt Jamie, who was retired as a full bird colonel. So a big role model in my life growing up. Her husband was a chief, my Uncle Bob. So, huge role models of mine. Um, and they could never have kids. That was like always so sad. It was like Sherry was the sister that was just didn't I mean she wasn't like a super kid person, but she could have tons of kids. Whereas
Yeah.
and then you had my Aunt Jamie who is like super squared away. She's an Air Force officer and they can't have kids.
Yeah.
And that I always felt so bad. Like they paid all this money for in vitro, like all that stuff, and it never worked.
Man.
And so I always felt like awful about that. But what makes me smile today is, well, for one, Sherry never knew or met a single one of her grandchildren. So all my sisters have children now. And while my sister Ashley was pregnant, she passed away. So she has never seen one grandchild
Wow.
by the time she died. But my Aunt Jamie basically became my sister Rachel's her son's like guardian because my sister Rachel would go to work and my Aunt Jamie, who's pretty much well off with her retirement at this point, uh gets to watch her son like all day long. And
Yeah.
so like I was really happy like seeing on like Facebook and the pictures and the stuff they're doing. Like she ended up getting that child in her life.
Yeah. That's
It was just
awesome.
like it's just one of those beautiful things where like full circle moment.
Man.
Some powerful stuff.
Yeah.
You got me opening it up. You're too easy to talk to.
I mean, that's good, right? Like
It is.
I like that. I I've never met a stranger, I guess. You know. My whole family's like that. Like they'll talk to anybody. Um, maybe not my youngest sister. She's very quiet unless you know her, but the
Mm.
rest of my family, like, doesn't bother them to just talk to somebody random. Like my parents will talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. They don't care. They have no filter. That's something that I'm still working with. I'm like, you guys can't say that. My mom's like, why not? Why can't? I'm like, can't say stuff like
I
that.
think that's everyone's parents. My parents say some wild shit, and I'm like, what? How do we both live in the same country? And then you think like it's too funny. I never asked you the three random questions, by the way.
Oh, what are they? Let's go.
Okay. First question. We'll do a super easy one as the first one. First question is, if there's a movie on your life, all the stuff we're talking about, and you're the main character, Amanda, and you can pick any actress you want to play you in this movie, who would you pick?
Oh, dang, I don't know.
Any
I
actress,
I feel okay. Any actress right now, my female crush is Sofia Vergara.
because of that Netflix thing.
Yes, because she is a boss in that show.
I gotta see it. Everyone keeps
I
talking
mean,
about it,
I
like
don't have
how
the
good she is in it.
accent. Like her accent is very strong, but like she's just such a good actress. She's good. I haven't
Oh,
finished the show yet. I'm on like I think I have 2 episodes left, but it's good.
I got to get into it. I really do. I'm rewatching True Detective.
I just watched season 2 of that when I was in England last week.
Season two, like the mafia one, like
Uh,
the crime lords, like the Russians, and it
no,
wasn't that.
this one was the one with where Colin Farrell is the detective.
Yeah, that's the mob one. The
Oh, yeah, there were Russians in there.
yeah, like the Russian mob was there.
Yeah,
Like it's like a Vegas
all I can
casino.
think of is like the blue diamonds or something like that, the blue jewels or something.
That
Yeah,
I just rewatched that one. I watched that one first because I'm trying to watch the first season with my wife whenever we're both able to watch it. Because the
yeah.
first season is like incredible. Like
I,
Matthew
I never did
McConaughey.
it until I
Oh my
went
God. You never
there.
seen the first season?
No, I'd never even heard of it. I don't really watch TV. So,
I would definitely watch that first season. And it's based on real like human trafficking in the
oh,
US.
I would probably cry.
It's based on like real like theory, you
Have you
know.
seen The Sound of Freedom?
I started it and I was like, hell no.
Yeah. My sister
They,
told me to watch it and I was like, why would you tell me to watch this movie? It was very sad.
yeah, I can't watch it. My
Rough.
daughter's in a play right now, like where no parents are allowed. Like you have to drop them off and leave. And in the beginning of that movie, that's what happens. They have this
Yeah.
like model shoot and they drop their kids off. And the model shoot is just to sell the children. They take the pictures, they post it on the internet, and then Whoever
Yeah,
bought them on the internet, they just take them to that place. And by the time the dad got back, the whole thing was empty, and there's no way he could find those kids.
that was rough.
After I saw that, I said, turn this shit off. Like,
It was rough. I was like, I can't. I texted my sister and I was like, this is about child trafficking, isn't it? And she was like, just watch. And I was like, ah. It's like, why would you tell me to watch this? So yeah. Oh man.
if I
And
was
it's
to
just
have anyone play me in a movie,
real life.
if I was gonna have anyone play me in a movie that was like realistic, like that could play me,
Yeah.
I would pick kind of an underground actor. His name's Ben Foster. You got to Google that
I'm gonna look him up now.
or look him up because your phone's being used as your webcam, so you probably can't use that. But Ben Foster, that is who I would pick for mine. Okay, second question. I've always wanted to ask this, and I've never asked this ever before. This will be the first time. If you had the opportunity to know every single answer behind the mystery of ghosts or UFOs, you could pick one or the other, where every question you had would be completely answered. Which would you pick, ghosts or UFOs?
Ghosts.
Did you say ghosts?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I don't know, because there's like people that have real life instances with ghosts. And I would want to know things. Like I have, okay, so I just went to England to visit my friends that are British, right? And they live in like really old houses, and apparently there's a couple of spirits in their
All of
house.
England is haunted.
So I was like terrified because they had some priest come in and like walk through the house, and there's a spirit on the top of the stairs, like at the landing, named Stephen. So like every time I walked past that, I'd be like, am I touching him? What is happening here?
How do they know his name?
I don't know. It's so weird. But apparently they could hear like things happening throughout the house, like when nobody else was in certain rooms. And honestly, when I was there, it was just me and their two daughters were downstairs watching TV. And out of nowhere, we just heard five really loud knocks. And we all looked at each other. And I was like, I'm not going to look. Like, and their kids are
Yeah.
12 and 17. And then 12-year-old's like, I'll go. And I was like, no, don't go. Just stay here. Like, what the heck? But it's like,
Hmm.
why do they get stuck just in this
So
weird
I was raised in a haunted house in Maryland. My
heck?
whole all of Waldorf, Maryland is haunted. It's all Native American burial grounds. And lots of wars, and it's a very like there was even a demon that lived there like in the early 1900s, like a goat man. Like this place is no joke.
Crazy.
That yes, this place is haunted. Waldorf, Maryland. There's horrible history there. And so I was raised in a haunted house with the weirdest, craziest stuff ever. But the one thing and that made me more interested in it, right? It's because I
Yeah.
was raised with it. And one thing I've noticed that confuses me is that how similar they all are. Like, why do they all like to knock? Why, why can you always hear their footsteps? Why do they like to hide things? Why are they all so similar?
Yeah. It's creepy.
Well, some people think they're just demons from when they were kicked out of heaven and they're just stuck on earth, and that's what that is. A lot of people think that.
Here's my question. Here's a random question for you. Have you ever thought that maybe we're already dead and this is the afterlife?
I have thought about that because of
And
television
that's what
shows.
sometimes I feel like I'm in hell. I'm like, what if this is the afterlife? What if I've already lived a life and now this is the new me?
I would say I feel more like that it's a simulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like that because it's just like I'm a fan of I used to be a pro gamer. I used to be really into games, and our world and everything about it, it feels like a video game. Like we're on this floating rock, like we have boundaries, like video games have boundaries. You can't
Yeah.
just leave the map, right? Like you're stuck in this little bubble. That's the game.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Earth is. Like that's the game. Like we
Yeah.
can't. we can't leave Earth. It makes no sense why we're alive. Like
No. And
it's just so weird.
here's another question. Are we inside the earth or are we on the surface of the earth?
That's that flat Earth stuff you're getting into.
I've asked this question multiple times to multiple people and I always get all confused. I'm like, never mind, just forget it.
No, there's a cult who they have I saw like mysteries at the museum or something where they had like a little diagram of like what they thought Earth and space was.
Uh-huh.
And it was exactly that. Like they thought they were like in the center of the Earth and everything else is like inside the Earth and there's this shell that we just can't see or something. I
I
don't
feel like
buy it.
no, I don't know.
And to think that we're like the size of dust.
I know.
We're
I'm like
literally
on the
dust.
surface of the earth, like we're like this little point here. It just doesn't make sense to me.
And it's spinning like thousands of miles an
Yeah,
hour. Like we're
it's
just safe enough from the sun. The moon is just safe enough to help the gravity and the tides. Like it's all just worked out just perfectly. And then we've been around less than 1% compared to the rest of the universe.
yeah.
Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he had a calendar and he said if this was the whole universe timeline, this calendar, this month of December, he's like humans have been here on the 31st of December, like on the final hour. Like
Weird.
think of if how much but happened before we even existed.
Yeah, that's
It's
weird.
bizarre. Everything about it, us being here is bizarre, and it really reminds me of a video game or a simulation.
Yeah, man.
All right, third question.
All right.
Yeah, this is the third one, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, third question. Hmm. If you could go back in time and tell, when you had that horrible week,
Yeah.
if you could give that person a message of encouragement, they wouldn't know it's you. They wouldn't know it's from future you.
Mm.
Was there any sort of message that you think would help?
Um, I don't know, maybe just don't give up because I felt so defeated at that time. Like, especially being 17 and not really having like a lot of support. You know what I mean? Like my dad was always at work and my mom was always mad at me. So it was like, you know, get the hell out and don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, you had a rough start.
I did. I really did.
And so I'm happy you finally made it out, right?
Yeah.
You finally left.
Yep. Yep. It was
How did that
great.
feel?
It was great, but I was very sad because I didn't have my sisters. And I mean, you know how basic training is. Like people are shuffling in and out of your flight and stuff's happening and really you're just trying to get out of there.
Yeah, you're
So
basically in prison.
yeah. Oh, there he is.
You're in voluntary prison.
Yep. Yeah, it was rough. Um, the yelling and stuff didn't bother me because I was used to it, but like I was not used to wearing boots, so my feet hurt. I don't have good feet. Like I've had a million foot surgeries. So like that was my biggest complaint in basic training was like my feet were jacked, but I
Hmm.
pushed and I made it.
Yep, you did. And what career field did you go into?
Aviation resource management.
I don't know what that is.
All right, so we do anything and everything that you can do for aircrew and parachutists. So we can work in a flying squadron and create their
So you know how
flight.
to sew?
No, not like that.
You don't sew parachutes?
No, that's aircrew flight equipment.
Oh, that's right.
But we work in the same building usually.
So how are you
But
different from them?
we do all the admin work.
Okay.
So we track all their flight time, their ground and flight currencies, basically make sure they're current and qualified to fly or
Isn't that
jump.
like a 24-hour ops type of job?
It depends on what kind of unit you're in. So, Like when I was with F-16s in Korea, we had like rotating shifts, and like sometimes we'd go into work at like 3 in the morning. And then if we were on nights, then we'd be at work until like 1 in the morning. Like it was kind of like a swing shift, I guess. But
So would
um,
you say you're the admin cell for the flight line for the pilots?
yes.
Okay.
But they also have an admin on the maintenance side as well, but it's very different. They track like they track the aircraft side of things, and we track the personnel side of things. So we control like their flight pay. Um,
Oh, wow. Are
yeah,
you considered FSS or maintenance?
no, we're considered ops technically.
Ops.
Yeah,
That's a small little group, isn't it?
yeah.
I don't
And
meet
then
many
like
ops folks.
if you work in like usually if you're in like a fighter squadron, you're typically the only enlisted people in the squadron. So like assigned to the unit. So when I was with A-10s and F-16s, um, we were the only enlisted. And so there's like 6 of us assigned to that unit, and
Would you
everybody else.
say that job is like super difficult, a big learning curve, or would you say, no, it's not that bad? I got it pretty quick.
Um, I I'd say the job part is easy. It's the dealing with people part that is very difficult because, like flyers just want to fly. They don't care about what the ins and outs are. They just want to go. And the same thing with jumpers, like parachutists, like PJs and combat controllers and TACPs, they just want to go. They don't care about filling out a paper that says they did training, but we have to have those things in order to let them fly. So it's very hard sometimes because you deal with a lot of alpha personalities, and it's it takes a strong person to sit there and be like, no, you're not going until you do this.
Right.
So
Yes. I mean, I'm in public health and we were doing like deployment out processing and PHAs at one point. And, whenever it come time for the special forces dudes, they'd be like, they just wouldn't do it. And we're like, you literally have to legally, or you can't go. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, man.
yeah. And
But
then
yeah,
when they get put on like a restriction. So when I was in Mildenhall, I was with the combat controllers and the PJs, and they had a 6-month stand down where they couldn't do any jumping. And those people get real irritated when they can't do their job. Like,
wow.
because they can't really do anything. All they can do is ground
They have
training.
that. Yeah, they just had that one purpose and now it's gone. Yeah. Dang. Okay. No, that's a really cool job. That's very unique. I don't meet many folks that have that background.
I like it. I don't want to do it anymore, but I like it.
You've
I'm
never
ready.
retrained or did a special duty or anything.
The only thing that I've done outside of that was the resilience office for the 1 year, um, about a year ago.
Like the lead MRT type of thing.
Yeah,
Oh, nice. Yeah, that looks like a good job.
it was great.
Okay, so
To
let's
do
get
that
into,
job, I would stay in the Air Force.
I mean, you could as a civilian.
Well, yeah, but like I would stay in the Air Force much longer if that job was like an all the time job for a military
Yeah.
member.
When
I think
you,
I think it's good to have a military member in that position.
oh, it absolutely is.
Like it's just civilians don't, there's a difference.
It seems like your mom's lecturing you if it's coming from them sometimes.
Yeah.
You're like, you don't know, mom. Um, so yeah, when you go to retire, like me and you are, and you start to really learn like what you're good at, what you're bad at, and what you want to do, the things that bring you joy. And then when you realize you can't do that in the Air Force, I think there's a talent issue. I really do. And from my own story, I was going to be the podcaster for the Air Force. A lot of people were behind it. A lot of influential, high-ranking people wanted that to happen, and they could not make that happen. It was impossible. The system is not designed to just pluck someone and put them in some spot.
Yeah.
It's just not designed that way. they're like, well, first we have to make this position. Like it could happen in like 3 years from now. And I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not waiting 3 years for you to tell me no after 3 years because of some other reason.
Yeah.
So we have a talent issue, and there's a lot of retirements going on. If you've noticed on Facebook, a lot of people who shocked me that are retiring.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so let's get into the core of the discussion here. And by the way, you've done fantastic explaining everything about your upbringing. We spent a lot more time on that than I thought we would because it was like because I was fascinated by it because I've could relate with it, and I 100% believe that everything you just told us is trauma that you've dealt with as an adult.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to spend a lot of time on that because like it became clear to me these issues you ran into as an adult, like I did too,
Yeah.
were you trying to sort through that and just not knowing how. It just comes out in weird ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you want to start with that part of your journey?
Ooh,
Drinking.
drinking. My second base was Kunsan, South Korea.
Ammo
So
bowls.
I mean, anything and everything. Soju was like the thing to drink. So back then we mixed it with Kool-Aid, and that was like what we drank every day after work. Um, and drinking, and like in my family, like my parents didn't really drink a lot growing up. They do now. But like growing up, they didn't really drink a lot. But my mom's brothers were like hardcore drinkers. And then my biological dad is 37 years sober. So he's a recovering alcoholic.
So it's in
And
your DNA.
in my DNA. And, I don't know how many times, my mom would tell me, like, be careful with your drinking. You need to be careful with your drinking. And I'd just be like, yeah, okay, like, whatever. It's not a big deal because I didn't know any better. I was 5 years old when I remember opening a beer for my uncles, like it was cool to grab a beer and take it outside to them while they were all drinking and smoking cigarettes and cooking barbecue and whatnot.
Mhm.
So, like, for me, it was normal. Like, and then when you go to Korea, it's even more normal to be around alcohol and
I would
be.
never have, my career would have never made it to Korea. Like as crazy as I was, I've never been there, but you wouldn't be talking to me right now had I been stationed there. I promise
It was
you.
rough. It was that year. I got stationed there in December of 2006. So I was there all of 2007. And I can barely remember what I did there because all I did was drink. Um, yeah. And like
And that's when the habits, like it starts with like all fun and games,
yeah.
right? It
And
starts
like
with,
you're just
it's a positive experience. And then at some point there's a shift, right? I'm guessing that happened to you too.
yeah, I mean, and then also like for me and my career field, right? Like when we're in flying units, it's the culture. Um,
They
like
have a bar and stuff.
it's called a heritage room now.
I thought it was called the Hooch.
Those are in Korea, but
Oh.
in the flying units, we used to call it the bar, and they had to change it because obviously it wasn't politically correct. And now they're called heritage rooms. But there's a beer light, and on certain days the beer light goes on, and anybody that's at work can drink. So I
Whoa.
didn't start experiencing that until I went to Tucson. So I was a brand new staff sergeant, and that was the first time I had ever seen, like, other than Korea, but like seen, them having roll calls and stuff like that where the enlisted weren't allowed. It was only for the pilots. And then we'd come in and the squadron would be just like in shambles. Like the bar would have pizza boxes everywhere, broken glass, like just, I mean, that was like their tradition, like
So you
So
never got to see those nights. You just saw the
yeah,
aftermath.
yeah, we saw the aftermath. We never had to clean it up. Like they did it, but it was just like the very first time I had seen that, I was like, what is this? Because I'd never been in an A10 unit before. And then I ended up spending 7.5 years in Tucson. And I kind of rotated through all the A10 units. But like you see it all the time. Like
Hmm.
it's just the culture of being a flyer.
Mm.
So I continued, I drank a lot in Korea. I slowed down when I got to Ramstein the first time. I got married after 6 months of being at Ramstein, to another
What happened
military.
there?
Um,
Was
I
this the
think
guy that with the kid that you helped raise?
this is my first husband. So,
Oh,
the first marriage doesn't count, when you're in the Air Force.
that's why I never got married. It just didn't seem to be working for anyone. So I said, the hell with that. I'm not doing that.
Um, yeah, so uh I got married at 22. I had been in Ramstein for about 6 months, and the guy that I was seeing was going to PCS, and young and
Classic.
got married, um, and we were not. I don't know. We were both just young, very dumb. Um, he was in a combat comm squadron and I was in a C-130 squadron. So we were always kind of high-fiving each other. Like he was in the field and I would go TDY and then he would deploy and then I would deploy. And it was just like constant. Um, so we ended up splitting up in 2011.
So you got a
Um,
divorce?
yeah, yeah. So we got divorced in February, Valentine's Day of 2012 was
What made the divorce happen? When you finally got to spend time with each other, you're like, hey, this actually sucks.
yeah. And like I said, we were young, right? So like he was just into video games and like just not the mature person I wanted to be with. If
So he was a gamer.
Yeah.
That can
Literally,
be.
I had to buy an Xbox to talk to him.
What was his
Like
game of choice? That says a lot about a person. Do you remember what he was hooked on?
Call of Duty.
Okay.
And then when it wasn't Call of Duty, it was wrestling.
Okay.
So
This guy sounds weird. If you said Call of Duty and Minecraft, I would have said okay. But you said wrestling?
yeah.
Is this a redneck or something? What a weird guy.
Yeah, so that was, my parents were not happy. I just out of nowhere called and was like, I'm getting married. And my parents were like, what the hell is going on? And
They said, get your ass back home.
and it just kind of blew up in my face.
You're grounded.
Yeah, they were not happy.
So how long were you married to that person?
Almost 4 years.
Well, that's longer than I thought.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we were gone all the time. Like we PCS from Ramstein to Tucson, and we got there in February, and I went TUI in June, and then when I got back, I was like, "You need to take a TDY or a deployment, or you need to move out." Like this
Damn.
is, and so then he deployed, and then I went TDY back to back. He came back, and then I deployed. So, and then he deployed again because I was supposed to go. Here's the kicker. I was supposed to go to Afghanistan. So he applied for a deployment to Afghanistan, got picked up for it. And then a week before I left, they diverted us to Osan. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And then you went to Osan.
And I went to Osan. So I was there from February 2011 until September, I think. And we were deployed there. So yeah.
Wow.
And that time I wasn't as bad in Korea. Um, but also like I felt like me again, like I wasn't at home upset because my husband wasn't paying me any attention. Like I was like, I'm free, like so
So
I
you had one of those relationships where the dude would get home, hop on the games, talk with the boys, and then that was it from until it's time to go to bed, and that was basically every day.
Yep. I watched every episode of Grey's Anatomy. That was, I think it was like 8 seasons at the time in like a week because I had nothing else to do.
Jeez. Yeah, my wife gave me an ultimate. I was that person. I was a pro Halo 3 player.
Okay.
So I was ranked like 18th worldwide. I was making montages and videos and like that was my thing. And she was like, "Yeah, this is like really not cool. Like this is dumb." And if you're ever she basically was like, "You're acting like a child." And if you're ever gonna grow up or want a marriage or anything, like you probably need to put this behind you. And I finally did, and I will never play it. I only have a Nintendo now. Because if
For
I
the
get
kids.
on like, because if you put Halo or Call of Duty in front of me, that's like crack cocaine. It's like a drug to me. Like I'll go crazy. I'll binge it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just can't even have it in my life. But so I know the type of person you're describing, which is a lot more common these days, and it's kind of dysfunctional. When that person would rather just sit at that chair all day long. Like
Yeah.
what's the spouse supposed to do? I think it's becoming a bigger problem for
Yeah.
people today.
I mean, it's better than I guess going out and spending money and whatever, but
I don't know, is it?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
It wasn't for me. I was not happy. So
No, I don't think it is better.
I needed attention, clearly.
Right. Okay,
But
so how was your drinking at that point and how were you feeling mentally, about yourself and
at that point, I was really struggling because I had actually failed a PT test
oh
right
snap.
I went to Korea. And so a lot was riding on that test, the next test, because
Otherwise they wouldn't let you leave, right?
well, and it wasn't no, so that I was able to deploy. I just had to take another test before I got back. Um,
Oh, okay.
but if I failed that PT test, I wasn't going to be able to test for promotion. And
Right.
so I was terrified. I had, when we deployed to Korea, we all had roommates. So we didn't stay in tents. Our commander ended up getting us into condemned buildings. So we
Oh my
were,
God. That happened to me too. I was in so many condemned
oh,
buildings. I was in a building that was the first floor was flooded, or the
oh my,
basement. The basement was flooded. It's
yeah, it
wild.
was rough. I mean, I'll take it. Like it was nice to have, heat and air conditioning when we needed it, but they were not great, but it was better than staying in a tent, I guess.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, I had a lot riding on that. I had a roommate who, I had met the year prior on a TDY, and she and I had become really close. She was a big runner, really into fitness. So, if it wasn't for her, I probably would not have passed my test. So she worked out with me almost every day. We went to go eat. She was like a freaking TI. I'd like go get a salad and I'd look at the dressing and she'd be like fat free. And I'm like, oh, like I would get so mad. But I lost so much weight and I passed my test and I made a 90 and I hadn't made a 90 ever. So
Wow.
like super thankful. And my drinking it wasn't like the first time when I was in Korea, but it was still pretty bad. Like, I mean, we deployed with the A-10 pilots and all of maintenance. So, you know,
They get wild.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And we drank a lot.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I'm surprised I don't have like a bad liver. Like
Right.
I don't know how. But yeah, so deployed there, um, came back, and then my ex came back shortly after I did. I moved out, filed for divorce. We got divorced February of 2012, and only my closest friends knew. I showed up to work with a new name tag, and everybody was like, "What the hell?" So I didn't even tell anyone. Like, I was so embarrassed because I failed, you know, it was just
That's how you were raised.
this is,
You were raised to feel embarrassed and to
yeah,
hide things,
for
right?
sure. Yeah. I mean, even we talked about the DUI stuff, so we'll get into that later, obviously, but like the minute I told my parents about my DUI, they were like, don't tell anyone. And I'm like, I'm not gonna not tell anyone. Like, this is this is my story. This is my life. And there are other people that are probably going through the same stuff that I was going through that don't know what to do. Like, so I'm gonna talk about it. But my parents were not like, the first thing that came out of their mouths after they yelled at me was, don't tell anyone.
And you're
And
grounded.
yeah, basically. So yeah, I was pretty embarrassed about it. Showed up to work with a new name tag. Um,
Where's this guy now? Just side note, where's this dude now?
he actually just retired.
Oh,
Um,
so he
he
made
was,
it to the end.
yeah, he did. He just retired, and I think he's back in Tucson. I could be wrong, but
Hmm.
he didn't have a great last assignment. It was in Nebraska, I think.
Well, they do have the Nebraska Furniture Mart.
No, mm-mm. I
You've
would
ever
never
heard of
work.
that?
Yes, I have.
That
I
makes it worth it.
so yeah, so he's retired now. He's remarried, has kids. Um, you know, good for him.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was just curious,
yeah,
you
hopefully
know?
he's grown up now. So
Yeah, hopefully he's letting his kids play games while he cheers them on instead of snatching
yeah,
the controller and making them watch him.
yeah. So yeah, I got divorced, and then literally 2 months later, I met my second husband.
2 months
Um,
later?
yeah, 2 months. So my ex and I had been, I mean, we'd been deployed the whole 2011, so we didn't really see each other. And then the divorce is final in 2012. And then 2 months later, I met my second husband. Um, and after my first husband, I was like, I'm never dating someone in the military ever again. Like, not doing it. So the second husband was prior military, but was a civilian when I met him through a mutual friend. Um, Knew he had a son, didn't bother me. Especially like after my stepdad has been with my mom all these years, it's very natural for me to just like, hey, no big deal. Like, I love kids. You know, so just the crazy way the life plan works out. Um, he had pictures in his house of his son, him and his son, and we met in April. So at the end of April, I get a friend request on Facebook, and it's from his son's mom,
Oh, red flag.
who I know from work.
What?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
snap.
We were in different units, but her job was weather, so she would come and brief our pilots on the weather every day. So I saw her every single day.
And then she make eye contact with you on the way out and just like stare you down.
Oh, she hated me. Like, and I told him, I was like, you need to tell her. And he was like, no, she doesn't care. She's never cared about who I've dated, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, trust me, she's going to care. And she did. And she made life a living hell for both of us. They had 50-50 custody of their son. And the way it worked in the beginning was if she had him, my ex would call that night and say good night, see how his day was or whatever, and vice versa. That stopped instantly the minute she found out about me.
Mm.
Like, or was a very frequent occurrence. We ended up, I got moved into a different unit, which was the same unit she was in, just because it was my turn to rotate into that unit. So it just was not good at all.
What was your guys' ranks?
We were both staff sergeants.
Okay, well, at least you were both the same rank. Because if she outranked you, you would have been toast.
Yeah, we're both staff sergeants. And then we were trying to get full custody of his son. He and I ended up getting married in August of 2013. So we had been together a little over a year. And both of us, he had been married before, but not to her. And so we were both like, we've both been married before. We're not in a rush. Just like whenever we decide to get married, we'll get married.
Was he older than you?
Just by a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was in the military for like 4 years and got out. Um, so yeah, we spent a lot of time in court trying to get full custody of him. We couldn't get full custody until his son's mom married a guy who was extremely abusive. And eventually she called the cops on him. And because she called the cops, then CPS got involved. And so that was just even more to add on to what was going on.
So like this guy was like beating this kid up,
Not the kid, his
the
mom.
wife? Oh no.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's horrible.
And then she ended up getting out of the Air Force, I think, because people were in her business, because people knew what was happening. Um, so, I mean, that's just my take on it. Who knows why she actually got out? But um, eventually, when all this finally went down and she called the cops on him, he ended up going to prison. But when he went to prison, like she told us, well, she told me because she and I ended up becoming really close, um, that he had threatened to kill us all. So, like,
Oh no.
he's gonna burn our house down with us in it. And I was just like, what? Like, and you weren't gonna tell us? Like, you were just, oh, you're gonna take my son out first? Like, okay, cool, burn them down, but take my son out of the house first. Like, I don't know. So I ended up becoming really close with her um, for the sake of her son. Because at the end of the day, like that's his mom, you know?
Well, I mean, that's good on you for
Yeah.
allowing that to happen.
And for me, it was just like, you know, I didn't have that opportunity. Like I watched my parents, like my biological dad and my mom, argue on the phone over stuff that wasn't relevant. Um, and my ex and his son's mom were not friends. Like they hated each other. Um, and so the only thing for me to do was to make sure that it was a very cohesive environment for him. So at some point we had to do supervised visitation, like by the court. So that affected me at work because, I worked in town. My ex worked an hour away. So I would have to leave work, go pick his son up from school, take him to the visitation place, come back to work, leave work to pick him up. So like my work center was being affected because I was having to leave so much.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like that in the civilian side. Maybe it is, but in the Air Force, if you have like something unique that requires you to leave, they don't like that.
No,
Like
no.
you
I ended
basically
up getting a markdown on my EPR because I wasn't at work enough. And I was like, but I'm here. I just have to leave to go drop him and pick him up. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like they might preach something to you about like, oh, this is important, family first, got it. But I'm telling you, um, if you start not showing up for whatever, it could be anything, that certain people will really start getting
yeah.
pissed off. And
And for
again, I
me,
hope that's not a civilian thing, but we'll see.
yeah, I don't know. Well, I know like with my ex, he was a civilian at the time, and he would have to take like half a day or like a whole day off of work and not get paid if his son had stuff to do. So it was just easier for me to do it because I could just make up the time later. I'll just
Hmm.
stay late this day or come in early this day. But
Hmm.
it did affect me. And I honestly didn't think it affected me initially, like just like personally. It was just like take care of business, do what you need to do. Well, then once the court ordered visits stopped, um, then I was the person that supervised the visits. So,
Really?
yeah, because there was still stuff going on with her ex-husband. So she had to have supervised visitation. So I was the person that supervised. but also helped her with her other kids while she wanted to spend time with her son. So I did way more than I needed to do.
Yeah, you went above and beyond.
Yeah, I really
You know, with
did.
all the hassling she did for you towards you,
Yeah.
a lot of people would have just turned around and hassled her right back and said, "Nope, you're not seeing this kid. I don't support that at all." And you could have made it hell for her, but you
And for
didn't.
me, it was
So,
just like I wanted her son to be healthy and happy and not be stressed, like because in the beginning when I was first dating my ex, like he would come to their son would come to the house and he'd be like, "My mom said she doesn't like you." And I'd be like, "Well, okay, tell your mom I like her a lot and she's a great person." Like like just he was 5, like he doesn't know any better, like
yeah.
so it was a little difficult, but I did what I thought was right and what I thought was best so that he could have that relationship with his mom and not feel like it was a bad thing, not
Hmm.
feel like he was going to be in trouble for wanting to see his mom or whatever.
Right.
Uh, but with all that going on, her ex he ended up going to prison for a year for beating her. And
Jeez.
when he got out, he had an ankle monitor for a while, but I had their son all the time. So I was constantly like on guard, checking my mirrors, like making sure there wasn't a car behind me.
Like if this
Um,
dude wanted to come after you.
yeah, because it was our fault that all this stuff happened, because we wanted the son. So yeah, I struggled. I carried a gun with me every single day. I hated it. And then eventually I went and talked to my career field manager and was like, "I need an assignment. Like, I have to get out of here. I'm not safe. Like, I don't know what to do." And he was like, "You're coming up on you're coming up. You're like next in line. Orders dropped. I didn't get an assignment." And I was just like, "You have got to be freaking kidding me." And then out of nowhere, I showed up to work one day and they were like, "Hey, you got an assignment, you're moving." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're leaving this summer." And that was in March. And in July, we left and we moved to England. Um, and that was probably the best thing.
I'm glad you left the
For
country.
me. Yeah, like we had to get out of there. I felt so much safer. Um, but I think I held a lot of resentment towards my ex just because he wasn't around and I was the one carrying everything. Um, and we had other issues too, like communication wasn't great. My main priority was his son. So like it just was not healthy.
Hmm.
Uh, and then we eventually split up. Um, and when we split up, I moved into my own place, but we hadn't decided like if we were getting divorced yet or not. We were overseas, how that goes when you're married to a civilian, like things are a little bit different. They're still on your orders, they're still sponsored by you, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I moved into a new unit the week that he told me he filed for divorce. Um, and I was not prepared. I went back to work and I was a freaking train wreck. I was crying every day. And the unit I was in a special ops unit. So 98% males who did not care about feelings. And I really struggled in that unit just because I had pretty much lost everything, like stopped seeing my stepson, wasn't a mom, wasn't a wife anymore. And
So a lot
that,
of like your identity just stripped from you right like overnight.
yep. And that's when my drinking got really bad again. Like my drinking wasn't that bad. I would say now that I look back at it, I did have like I have pictures that I like, how your pictures come up on your memories sometimes.
Hmm.
Every so often, there'll be a random picture of me just passed out on the floor asleep.
Oh God.
And like, I look at it now and I'm like, that's embarrassing. But then
Hmm.
also, I look at it and think, like, why did my ex husband take this picture of me? Like, that's messed up. Like,
Right.
like, oh, hey, was you last night. You don't remember anything. And so when I drank, usually I was a blackout drinker. So I would drink to the point of not remembering anything. Um, and I've been like that since I started drinking.
And
So
what kind of, personality do you take on when
mm,
you hit that point?
it just depends. So it would depend on like if I was emotional already, if I had stuff going on. Sometimes I was an angry drunk, sometimes I was emotional drunk, and sometimes I was fine. Um, but every time I woke up, I would wake up and think like, what happened last night? What did I do? Did I say anything stupid? Like did my ex would have his back turned towards me and I'd be like, shit, what did I do? Like I did something to make him mad, and then not remember it.
It's like you have
And
a split personality that just took over.
absolutely, absolutely.
And do you remember the movie The Butterfly Effect?
Yes.
So when Ashton Kutcher goes into a new version of himself, at first he like doesn't know anything, but then all the memories of that life start flooding in, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, whoa, oh my God." Like that's how it is when you're
Yeah.
hungover. You're like, "Oh, that wasn't that bad." And then you're like, "Oh, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God." And you might have like a black eye or something, and then it's like all these
Yeah.
stories and embarrassing
Yep.
moments start coming back piece by piece, and you just get completely mortified.
Yeah. And then it's like now I've like read a lot of books and stuff about, alcoholism and whatnot, but like they call it like anxiety. So like you're hungover, but you have anxiety because you don't remember what happened. That was
Mhm.
all the time. And I hated it. And then I'd apologize and people would be like, oh, you're fine. Like it happens. It's not a big deal. So then I would think like, oh, this is normal. Like it's fine. It's not a big deal. Um, and it wasn't until, well, so yeah, I was in England, right? So all that happened. Then COVID happened. So during COVID, our unit was working 1 week on, 1 week off, and we would rotate. So on my weeks off, I would work out, eat, watch Netflix, and drink until the next day. And I would do that for an entire week because there was nothing else to do.
How much were you drinking?
Uh, I couldn't even tell you honestly.
Like a six pack?
No, I was usually drinking like wine or margaritas, but
Mm,
or like limeritas. I would drink
I
probably like
love margaritas.
I would probably drink like 9 limeritas.
I love those things.
Oh my God. I'm glad that they don't have them here anymore because that was my weakness. Like
Me
I
too.
go to the shop at and grab 2 cases and
Dude,
go,
yeah, I'd be at air. I was stationed at Luke Air Force Base, and I'd be barbecuing. Man, I have like 3 cans just set up, crushing them back to back, and it's like I'm a dude. You don't see many dudes crushing them limeritas. And then
oh,
the strawberry one came out.
hey, they're 8%, those little cans.
Yes, I would just feel great. Like it would give me the
I have
drunk I was
four.
looking for.
I would have four and four would be good, but I would just keep on. Like just because. Like just because I could, just because there was nothing else to do. And
Mhm.
not only was it COVID, like I had just gone through that transition of losing who I was. So it was just even
So you
worse.
were alone during all that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in England, we had England was really strict. England and Europe, they were very, very strict. So when COVID first started, you couldn't even have people in your car. Like you could only have one other person in your car. So like I moved houses, I had to move on my own because all the movers closed. Like everything was shut down. So they eventually said like you can have a support bubble, but it's like one other household. So I met a family, a British family who ended up, they were my support bubble. They had kids, the ones that I told you I went and saw last week. The kids were like 7 and 12 maybe at the time. And I think that on the weeks that I could go over there, saved me, honestly. I
Like
was going,
being with this family?
Yeah, because they had kids and I became really close with all of them and they became my family because I had lost all of that. Um, and when I first met them, I was still drinking really bad when I first met them. And I actually called my mom and was like, I need you to get a passport and I need you to come stay with me because all I'm doing is drinking and I'm going to make a bad decision.
Wow,
And
you already felt that.
yeah, I was already like drinking a lot. I was going to the pubs when the pubs were open. I would go to the pubs. We could sit outside. I would drink, and then I would drive home. And somebody would typically follow me home. So, like, I would make sure that I got home safe. Like, was it smart? No, it absolutely was not smart. And that
So when you
DUI,
got in the car, like, did you know you were pushing it? You were pushing your luck.
um, yes, absolutely. I knew I was over the limit. Not like when I got my DUI, but I was definitely over the limit. Um, and like in England, like ciders and you're outside, it's the summertime, like you just start drinking. You don't feel like you're over the limit, but you definitely are. Um, and then so that was 2019. So we separated, got divorced in 2019. My mom came out um, shortly after my divorce was final, and she stayed with me for 10 weeks.
Wow, so
Uh,
your mom made the trip out to England.
I had to fly home and get her, but she was like, okay, like I don't want to fly by myself, but if you come home and get me, like I'll come. So I flew home, stayed home for 5 days, and then went back and she stayed with me for 10 weeks. It was a long 10 weeks of living with my mother
Yeah,
because
I
I
want to know how that went for you. Did you
her.
regret it? Did it work?
Um,
Like,
no, I had my moments, but I think like when we talk about it now, she made a comment last week about like how far I've come. Like she watched me go through like all of the pain I was going through, and she didn't know how to help me. Like, she'd be like, you need to stop drinking like that. You need to stop, don't be doing this, don't be doing that. But I wasn't listening to anyone. Like, I was just
mhm.
hurting and I didn't know what to do. So to not deal with it, I drank. Uh,
Mhm.
and, she watched me, go in a bathroom and throw up in my house and like pass out in the bathroom. Like, she watched all that and listening to her now talk about it, like it's pretty sad, like that she didn't know what to do or how to help me. She just watched me be miserable because she did not know how to help.
Damn.
Um, that same year, earlier in the year, right after I had moved out, I made master. So I made master my first time. It took me 5 times to make tech. That freaking took forever. And then I made master my first time, and I don't know how I made it because I went in there to test and I raised my hand and was like, can I please reschedule because I have not slept in 3 days and I think I'm getting divorced. And they
And
let
they're
me
like, they let you reschedule?
reschedule.
Well,
So
yeah, that's great that they did
for
that.
those people that don't know, because they don't ask you, like, if you just say, like, you haven't slept or, when they ask you, like, have you worked a full duty day, those questions, like, they will reschedule you without question. Like,
Wow.
they don't need to know details. As long as you are not lying about feeling ill or whatever, they'll reschedule you
Yeah.
without issues.
Did you
So,
have like a promotion statement or anything?
no, I was a basic promote. Like I said, I have no idea how I made it. I was shocked.
In my career field, as small as it is, if you don't have that promotion statement, it's statistically impossible.
Yeah,
The
I
small
was,
career fields get screwed with that system,
yeah, I don't like it. Like I said, I don't know how I made it.
but you did.
I did. And that was why I had called my mom to come out because I didn't want to lose my stripe. I was like, I don't like, I still have like, I put on the next year in January. So I still had to wait like 7 months to put master on. And she was there. I didn't do a promotion ceremony. I didn't do anything. Like I just did not feel happy for myself at all. I just
What?
put,
Really?
Yeah, I didn't even,
Why?
I went to my to the induction ceremony. And two of my girlfriends went with me because I didn't have anyone to go with me. Like I had a family that I was living separate from, and my ex didn't want to come. So I was just like,
So like every celebratory moment sucks.
yeah, yeah.
It's just
It
a
was horrible.
painful reminder to you that you're alone.
Yeah. Yeah. As you see people walking through, underneath the swords with their spouse or their kids or whatever. And here I am by myself. Like it was shitty. But
Yeah.
I went just because I know my family likes to see stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like my family, they're very proud that I joined the military. Um, so I did it just so that way I had something to show them. Not because I wanted to. And then when I had my promotion, like when I actually put on master, my mom was like, "Are you going to do anything?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Like I hate where I work. I don't like the people I work with. My family, I don't have a family anymore. Like my mom's here. My mom doesn't really understand what promotion stuff is. So for me, it was just like, no, I'll just go to work and come home."
What
And
about the work was not fulfilling to you?
I had there was a guy that I worked in the same room with that for whatever reason did not like me.
Was it because you
And
made master your first time?
possibly, and he had been in longer than me. They ended up finding a way to give him the stripe at some point. But he made my life a living hell. I
Don't you
hated it.
love that when you meet folks like that?
It was horrible. I was like, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I was like, what am I doing? Like,
And you'll
why?
never know. That's the sad part. When you're in that situation, you'll never know why.
And for me, it was like, not just like that I even wanted to know why, but the stuff I was going through was hard for me, right? And I'm in this unit where there's three females, and these guys are so mission focused that they don't care that you're crying at work, or they don't care that you're getting a divorce. Like, yeah, okay, I've been divorced too. Suck it up. Like, that's kind of how it was. I'm like, yes, I've been divorced too. Like, my first divorce wasn't like this, but my second divorce was life changing for me. Like I was already like 34, 35. Like, I'm like, my whole life is gone and I have nothing to show for it. It's kind of how I felt. So
Yeah.
for me, I was miserable. And my ex-husband was a civilian that worked on the planes that were sitting outside of the hangar I worked in. So there were days that I'd pull into the parking lot and his car would be there. And I wouldn't want to get out of the car because I didn't want to have to pass him. There's just all these little things that would come up that I didn't think would really affect me, but they actually really affected me in the long run. During all of this, I was in counseling, I was in therapy. Um,
If that ex-husband tried to, at that time rekindle a relationship, would you have went for it or would you have been opposed to it?
no, I don't think I would have. I think we were
Okay.
just way too far. Things were said that were probably unforgivable.
Damn.
Like, I mean, I wish him well. And I, I remember when we split up, I remember specifically telling him, I will probably never love somebody ever again. Just because of how in love I was with him and just the way it all crumbled and fell apart. And
Damn. I
for
hate
me,
that
yeah,
happened to you.
it was rough. It was really
Yeah.
rough. Like I said, I didn't know how to deal with it. So I just drank. So I didn't have to deal with it.
Damn. That's
Yeah.
rough. That's hard to hear. And you had your heart broken too. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
that's painful.
I'm not saying like I was perfect in the marriage or whatever, right? Like I definitely said some things and did some things that were probably not good. But, you know, for a very long time, I was very, very like, I don't know, focused on my family and, you know, what was next, what was, you know, how we could keep this.
You didn't know what life would be like without that,
No.
right? Like that was your life forever. So when that was removed, it was like earth shattering.
I remember calling my sisters and saying like, are you guys going to be upset with me if I get divorced again? And they were like, absolutely not. Like, if you're not happy, you're not happy. But again, I felt like a failure, you know, it was just like, fuck, I got married a second time. And now, yeah, you know, double the time married, but now I'm getting divorced again. Like, now what? Like, it's just me. And oh, by the way, in 2020, right after my divorce, I had to put my dog down, who I had for 12 years. So,
Oh, geez.
like, it was just
That's
one thing.
and I just lost my dog, like, you know, which I put on Facebook, you know, trying to find all her pictures and videos, but that shit is way harder and hurts way worse
Yeah. And I didn't
than
have
you ever
that
could realize.
the last 2 years because I moved to England. He was already 11. So I left him with my parents. So I had to fly home. My mom flew home because she was done staying with me. I flew home the next week and I was home for 5 or 6 days and literally had to put him down and come right back.
Damn.
And then when I came back, that was when COVID hit and it was like quarantine. So I had just gotten back and I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I
Yeah, it was
was
like 14 days at that
yeah,
time.
yeah, I was miserable. I was like, well, just had all this crap happen to me
Damn. Yeah,
and
that's, you know,
by myself.
when you have that much downtime to think and you're not in a good headspace, that is
Nope,
not a good place to be.
nope. It was not fun. And I know
Idle
like,
hands do the devil's work. Have you heard of
yeah,
that?
yep,
That that shit is true, especially if you're drinking too much and now you're idle and you're just stuck. It's just you and your thoughts, your regrets.
yep.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it was really rough. And I
So what
had no,
happened next?
um, then I got my assignment to Germany. So super excited. Um, Drove from England to Germany because you can't actually drive over.
So like a
Um,
bridge or something?
they have a ferry and then they have a Euro tunnel, which you basically drive into like they look like 18-wheeler, like the big containers that go on top of an 18-wheeler. They
Mhm.
look like that. You pretty much drive into it and park your car. And then it's inside of a train. And this train goes under the water for 30 minutes and then you end up on the other side.
Are you on that same train?
Yeah, you're sitting inside your car, you can't get out.
What the hell? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. But
Dang.
it's a quick 30 minutes. It's expensive, but it's 30 minutes. It's fast and you're in and out.
Wow.
So yeah.
That is a cool thing that they have there.
Yeah. I took my mom through it when she came. My mom was terrified because she's like claustrophobic.
Yeah, I
She's
mean, if
like,
that cave
"Why are
caves
we-"
in, I
Yeah,
mean, damn, that's like a nightmare. That's nightmare fuel.
I can't believe it exists, but you can't see anything. Like, I mean, obviously you're so far underwater, but like there's no windows or anything. Like you can't
They're
look
actually
out.
just putting you through a teleporter and just not telling you.
You can't see anything, so you
Yeah,
don't know.
they're just
They open
teleporting
the
you.
door when you get out, and you're like, "Oh, okay, now I'm in France. This is cool."
Did your mom like England? Was she like, this is cool. I love this place? Or was she like, this place is weird, man. Get me out of here.
I think she had a little bit of both. Like she really loved London, obviously, because it's like hustle and bustle, big, busy, all that stuff. But like, I think it was a massive culture shock for her because, you know, like things close early on Sundays and like people just hang out. Like it's not like things are open 24/7 to go do. Like I think it was like a big, like, wow, this is what you do every day. Like, why is your refrigerator so small? And I'm like, well, because we're not like Americans here, Mom. Like, you only buy what you need.
Our country's designed to take your money,
Oh, for sure.
right? Like it's all centered around that. The hours things are open, the size of your fridge, it's all so you spend more money.
Absolutely.
That's crazy. I've never been to England. My dad was stationed there though when he was an airman. He
Yeah.
liked it. He said there's rats everywhere. I mean,
I didn't
he
see
lived in,
rat.
I mean, this is a long time ago. He lived in like a, back in the day, if you were an airman, you were like poor,
Yeah.
like welfare.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, he lived in this like rat infested apartment or something. It was really bad. But yeah, what is England like? Are the people nice there? Do they think you're weird because you're Americans? Like what is that like?
I think like when you're around a base, people just are nice because you've been there. Like Americans have been there for so long. Um,
Mhm.
but it's definitely very different. Like, I mean, their sense of humor is different. Like, you really have to understand like who you're talking to get it. Like, they don't ask like, "How are you doing?" They ask like, "You okay? You all right?" Like, they never like ask you like, "Hey, how are you?" It's like the very first couple interactions I had with somebody that was British, I was like, "What? Yes, of course I'm okay." Like,
That's what they say in Japan too.
do they?
Yeah, they always say daijoubu, which is like, are you okay?
Yeah, that's weird.
So maybe we're the weird ones.
Maybe it is us. We
They're
probably
like, man,
are.
they're assholes. They don't even ask if we're okay. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Joke. Yeah, it wasn't bad. That was my first time living there. I'd been to London once, but didn't really see too much when I went. Um, but Germany, I got my assignment here, and this was my second time. And I promised myself that if I got stationed overseas again, I would do it right. So I did a lot of traveling before COVID. Um, Came over to Germany, got here in September of 2021, and that's when all the Afghan stuff was going on. So got here and the flight line was full of people. Um, and so I ended up, the day before I got here, I got a call saying, "Hey, I know you were supposed to go to this unit, but now you're going to go to this unit because we need you here instead." So the job I went into was a functional manager position. So I was in charge of 22 people, which I was not prepared for because the unit I had just come from, I was in charge of one person as a master sergeant. Um, so I had to like really figure out what I was doing. And it was like people problems all day, on top of work problems, on top of my own problems. And then
You
I
said
would,
you're like a flight chief type of role.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's the worst. It's the hardest, one of the hardest,
yeah.
most frustrating.
And all of our people were scattered. So there were like 8 people in my section, and then the other however many were in different units. So like I
There's a
would
lot
have,
of folks that you notice are shirts now. Like they've made it so easy to be one. Like it's really quick now, and there's a lot of people as that you've seen are shirts.
yeah,
And I'm really good friends with one, and she's like, yeah, it's like a million times easier than being a flight chief. Like that's why most people would prefer being a shirt. It's like all the best parts of being in a leadership role and none of the annoying stuff.
yeah. It was hard. I was not prepared. Like I made master and put on master in a unit where nobody cared. So I didn't have somebody like to look up to and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" or whatever. So I just was
You were on
figuring
your own.
as I was going. Yeah. Um, and so I would work, and then when I would get off of work, I would go volunteer. They called them pods. So I was in pod 2. I would go there every day after work and on the weekends to
What was
volunteer.
that?
So each part of the flight line had a different pod, is what they called them. So like different sections, but there was the same people assigned to that pod. So like I worked in the mom and baby area. So I handed out diapers and formula and whatever the moms and babies needed. But you're there for hours at a time, you know, so you kind of build a relationship with the people that are there.
Is that like a COVID thing or what? I've never heard of
No,
that.
this was um when
The Afghan
yes,
refugees?
yes. Sorry, I was trying to think.
It
Yes.
was for that,
Yep.
like
They were,
transporting them.
yep. And they were here at
Okay.
Ramstein for like 2 or 3 months before
Right.
they got sent to the States.
Hmm.
So
I know
literally
one spot was like Virginia, and I think they had one in California.
I think in
You
New
know,
Mexico too. Like they got kind of spread out. But while they were here, you know, they could only do so much. Like they were in a hangar, you know what I mean? Like there was food and they had like a big screen TV that they would play movies on for the kids. But it was like literally they were either in their tent or in the hangar. And it
is
was
that how you
hot.
got the humanitarian?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
nice.
Yeah. So it was a hard time, but it was like I'm glad I experienced it. Um, but also it was very sad, you know, like I just there were so many people that like just came from different parts of Afghanistan and like just, you know, like some of them would talk to us about like, you know, some people were really well off in Afghanistan and now they're living in a tent with 6 other families, you know. And then there were some not so well off people who like would poop in the middle of the street. Like it was just craziness. Like
Wow.
trying to understand like where everyone was coming from and trying to, you know, people didn't, some of them didn't speak English. We had to have translators. So it was a lot. Like there were people like hoarding stuff, like because we would, you know, they would get donations of clothes and stuff, and each person could only get so much clothes.
The spouses set a lot of stuff up there for that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And so did the first sergeants. The first sergeants did a lot.
Did you know a lady named Heba Abdullahi?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. She was everything you're describing, like she described it to me before too. So that's a lot of work, you know. Was that more so that you're not alone, that you had a little more purpose? Like what drove you to do all
All of that.
that?
I didn't want to be home by myself. And you know, I felt needed. I felt like I had
Mm.
like if I didn't go one day and then I show up the next day, like there would be kids that would be like, "You didn't come yesterday. Like where were you?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I had to do this or I had to do that." But it was just like, "Oh, they noticed I wasn't here. Like this is sweet, you know, like I'm gonna come back." And they'd give me like little pictures and you know, they'd color and whatnot. And it was just like nice to feel like, okay, like I have something here, like I can come here and I can help. And I'm not sitting at home drinking. So my drinking wasn't really bad when I got to Germany because I was so busy.
Like you
Um,
knew that was a healthier route for you.
yeah. And I wouldn't say it was probably healthy, but it was healthier than drinking.
Right.
Um, that was in September, and I think they were all gone by the end of October. And then my drinking got started going up again. And then in February 22, we had a new inbound person that had just arrived, and I was taking that person around to look at houses and whatnot. And I was just like venting about work. And
Uh-oh.
we went to go have lunch and we were talking about like how we were going to do things because that person was going to be like my number two, you know? So it was like, okay, let's go grab something to eat. So we sat down to eat and I had a glass of wine. That was where it started. I had a glass of wine, I had a margarita, and then I had a Long Island iced tea.
Wait, this
Why
is
would I do that? I don't know. I just did.
wait, this is during like a lunch?
Yeah. So we weren't at work the entire day because I was like, you know, taking her, you know, to housing and then going to finance. And like, so we weren't in uniform. Like we were just out running errands and doing all the normal in processing stuff.
Did
So
she find that like odd?
no, because she had just come from Korea. So, you know, it wasn't a big deal. And I drove home from that restaurant, and I should not have driven home. Like, I know now that I was definitely already tipsy and over the limit, and I shouldn't have drove, but I drove anyway. And then I got home, and she was still with me, and we just continued drinking. So we started drinking probably around 1 p.m. And then at this point, it was, I mean, we'd been at the restaurant hours before I finally drove home. And then for another hour and a half, we just kept drinking. And at 6:30 p.m., so my dog was at the time going to doggy daycare, and they close at 7. So I lived 30 minutes away. So at 6:30, my alarm went off on my watch, and I was like, oh crap, I gotta go get my dog.
Okay,
I was
but
drunk.
well, at this point you're hammered, right? Because this has gone on for hours. Like, you did she say, hey, like, there's no way we can go get this dog? Like, that's
I don't remember.
crazy.
I don't
You don't
remember.
remember?
She says that she told me not to drive, but she was in the car with me. So, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. This is the DUI moment.
Yeah. I
I
don't remember.
expected it to be like a party bar situation.
Middle of
This
the
was to
week.
pick up your middle of the week, unexpected, completely random,
Yep.
and it was to get your dog from doggy daycare.
Yep.
Holy shit. That is not what I expected at all.
Yep. I drove 7 minutes through 2 villages. Not sure how I did it. Don't remember doing it. I remember getting to the stop sign and making a left-hand turn. And
Mhm.
as I was making that left-hand turn, I went to change the song on the radio. And when I did that, I missed a turn and basically just flew off the side of the road and crashed my car.
Holy shit.
Brand new car, had it for 4 months. It was totaled. When we wrecked, I didn't even realize we had wrecked. Like, I put my car in reverse to try to move.
Like,
And
you were trying to you're like, oh, that's weird. Let me just get out of this little spot and keep on driving.
yeah, and my car was like, and then that's when I was like, oh shit. And I was like, get out, get out, get out. Like, that's
Like,
what
so the panic set in when you realize you're a sitting duck.
yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
we got out. I couldn't get out on the driver's side, so I had to climb over to the passenger side. And like I said, I had run off the road. So, Germany, everything where I lived was back roads. So it's like twisty, turny, and farm fields, basically. So I was in like a farm field, and I had to climb up like a dirt area to get to the main road. And somebody,
So just so I'm tracking, just so you can paint the picture for me, you go to change the radio, and instead of turning, you just go straight.
yep,
And just off into a ditch or something.
yep, I hit a tree.
You hit a tree. Wow. Did y'all have your seatbelts on?
We're super fucking lucky.
Right.
Super lucky. I didn't hit anyone. My passenger was fine. I had a big bruise on the back of my leg and a cut on the back of my leg, but that was it. Nothing else happened. And I think that was just from me trying to get out of the car, not from like the actual accident. And then in Germany, if you witness an accident, you have to stop and call the police. So somebody saw me, pulled over, and when I got to the top of the road, she was like, an ambulance is coming. And I was just like, no, no, no. And like after this, I just remember bits and pieces. But there, like, an ambulance came, a fire truck came, the German police showed up, the American police, so security forces, on the
Everybody.
air side, yep, and the Army side.
Good God.
Yeah, the road was shut down for 3 hours
That's a little dramatic.
because they couldn't get the car out, and they had to do an investigation on like what happened in that area. So they shut the entire road down.
Well,
Even
it
though
sounds like they knew something was afoot.
oh yeah, so I obviously reeked.
Real quick,
Yeah.
I want to know, at what point in all this did you think, holy shit, I'm drinking and driving and I'm about to get screwed. Like, what the hell am I thinking? When did that hit you?
It wasn't until the lady said that she called the police or that she called an ambulance. And that's when I started crying and I was like, no, no, no. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just kept saying, I'm so sorry. Like, that's all I remember saying, and just saying I was sorry. And I was just crying.
Were you
Um,
convinced that you were caught, or did you think there might be
oh
hope?
yeah, no, I knew I was done. Um, I was drunk. Um, so in Germany, the way they do it here, because they just do whatever they want here. If you didn't know, German Polizei don't have to have a reason to pull you over. They can just stop you just because they feel like it. Obviously, I crashed my car, so they're already there. But they put me in an ambulance and made me do a breathalyzer. Did that. Then I got transported downtown to the German police station where they made me do blood and urine.
You
They
didn't go to a hospital first?
they didn't take me to a hospital at all.
You could
Yeah,
have like a neck problem.
they didn't care.
Jeez.
I didn't think about it until like the next day. I was like, they didn't even ask me if I wanted to go to the hospital. Like, maybe they did. I don't remember. But the next thing I remember peeing in the cup. And I had to sign a piece of paper that basically said like my driving privileges were suspended. They physically took my driver's license.
At
And
what
then
point did they say, "Hey, you have a DUI, that like you were driving drunk"? Was it the
I,
breathalyzer?
no, I don't think I realized it until I had to sign the paper that said like your driving privileges are now revoked. And that's when I was just like, I'm screwed. Um, and then the whole way from the local police station to the German or to the base police station, I was just crying and just saying I'm sorry the whole way there. Um, and then while I was at the base station, I had to do another breathalyzer, which I didn't understand why I had to do another one because they'd already done one and the blood and urine. My first breathalyzer test that I took, which was probably around 7:30 p.m., I blew a 0.257. And the limit in Germany is a 0.05. So I was way over. 0.3, I think, is like you're not awake. So
Wow.
I don't really
You were
remember.
right on the cusp of blackout drunk.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot. I just remember like being a train wreck and just crying and being upset. And oh, by the way, the day that this happened is the day that all the Ukraine Russia stuff started. So my supervisor is launching aircraft while he's waiting for me to get released from security forces. So now I'm impacting the mission as well.
Hmm.
So it just wasn't good. I mean, I had my troop with me, way over the limit.
And
My dog,
you were with that new person.
yeah. And my
You,
dog, stayed at doggy daycare anyway. Like
you
they
couldn't
don't
go
have
get the
a
dog.
problem. No. So he ended up staying there anyway because I couldn't go. So I lost my driving privileges for a year here in Germany. I lost a stripe. So I was a master. Now I'm a tech. Um, but that was my only punishment. I didn't lose any additional pay. I didn't have a control roster UIF. My commander thought that was the best action to take. So
Was that because you're a master sergeant? It was your first mistake, or what? Why do you think you didn't get the UIF and all that, all the bells and whistles?
yeah, I think because I hadn't been in trouble and because um, I still help my sisters sometimes when they need money, and I put that in my paperwork was like I send money home to my family to help support them when they need it. And so my commander was like, he took all of that into consideration. Um, I had a lot of character statements 26 people wrote character letters for me, and I turned in 12. And he took all that into consideration, and I got a punishment that I didn't want. Like, I wanted everything but my stripe taken, like, take all the money you want, but let me keep my stripe. Like, that was all I wanted, because I didn't really want people to know that I had gotten a DUI initially. I would go into the BX and I just felt like I had this huge sign over my head that was like, this idiot got a DUI last night. Like,
It's physical proof something happened that you can't hide.
yeah. And I didn't eat for like 2 weeks. I just couldn't eat. Like, I just felt so sick. And I was just like, I could have killed someone. And I think that was, for me, really hard to like digest, because, there's people in Germany, people are outside all the time, walking dogs, walking themselves, walking with their kids. Like, how did I make it through 2 villages without hitting something? Like, and I was pretty much untouched. My passenger was okay. I was okay. So, like, I couldn't really ask for anything else other than, like, please spare me. And it sucked that I got a stripe taken, but at least I'm alive. And I'm making it to retirement as a tech, but I'm still making it to retirement. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. And I stopped drinking for about 5 months. I went to ADAPT and I was in counseling. I stopped drinking for about 5 months. And then the very first wine festival I went to after I started drinking again, I got hammered. And I woke up the next morning like, why did I do that to myself? And it's just like, when you go to these festivals here, people buy, bottles of wine at a time. And the minute your glass is empty, somebody's pouring you another glass. And I didn't know how to say no. Like, I was just one of those, I was like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll drink it. And that should have been an eye-opener for me, but it wasn't. My birthday came around, Christmas came around, New Year's came around. I have a really hard time during December because it's my birthday, Christmas, and then my stepson's birthday is the 27th of December. And so, like, I have a really hard time just like coping in December. So I usually just drink, or I hide and just stay in my house. So on New Year's, I got really drunk, and a friend of mine took a picture of me because she thought it was funny. And I didn't think it was funny. I felt very embarrassed. And, she apologized and said, like, I didn't do it to like embarrass you. I thought it was funny.
What were you doing in the picture?
I was half in my door, in my front door, and half in the stairwell. So, like, I had basically unlocked my door and just like thrown myself on the floor, face down. And
they're like, this will be a funny photo.
yeah.
Did you know right then they took the photo, or was this a conversation later?
Was the next day.
So they showed you.
Yeah. And I hid from them for a couple days. And I was just like, I'm not, like, I shouldn't be drinking like that. Like, I don't really remember the night. Like, I don't remember even coming home. Like, I felt horrible. And then,
yeah, because that's how you got in hot water in that first place.
yeah.
You turn into this other person
Yep.
who's making horrible decisions. It's not you that's making the calls anymore. It's someone else. It's like an alter ego.
What would have happened if I would have killed someone? You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't have remembered it. Like, how shitty is that, to like kill someone or seriously injure someone and not even have any recollection of it? Like,
It's like you didn't even do it.
No. So that was in January. I had another one of those nights in like March, and then I had another one in June. And the one in June really, for whatever reason, really made me like that was when I was like, I need help, because I started thinking like, how many times since I started responsibly drinking again have I been in a blackout state? And 5 fingers was enough for me to go, okay, I need help.
Were all those blackout states at party scenarios or at your
Yeah,
house alone? They're all like going out.
with people. Yeah. And most of them were here at my house, but people were here, and it was just like, oh, I'm safe. I'm in my own space. Like, it's not a big deal. But when I really stop and look back at how many nights, like even in the past 15 years, you know what I mean? Like how many nights I've been like that there's one too many. And
Mm.
I should have stopped a long time ago, but I didn't. So that June one, I had gone to a little festival down the street from my house and money, because I was like, I'm not gonna buy any drinks while we're there. I had one beer on the way down, and when I woke up in the morning, I couldn't tell you how much I had to drink, because we ran into friends and they had wine and we just started drinking. And I don't remember. I don't remember walking home. And, I live on the main street in the town I live in. And it's like, what if I would have fallen into the street? What if somebody would have snatched me? Like, what if I would have got hit by a car? Like, just all these what ifs that started to scare me. So I got a hold of ADAPT and asked them to self-refer back in. And then when I went and talked to the tech at ADAPT, they asked me if I had ever dealt with the trauma that I'd been through in my life, because they were asking questions. And, I was like, yeah, I've been to therapy before. And, I was like, I was in therapy last year. And they're like, have you talked about this? Have you talked about that? And I was like, well, no, like there are all these things that I've been through that I didn't ever talk about. And had to deal with them when I went to inpatient. I did not want to go to inpatient. It was 28 days. I was there for 30 because they can only release on certain days. But it was intense. And I was
So when you
not.
say inpatient, you mean this is when you flew stateside,
Yep.
right? Was that like a mandatory thing? Do they like offer it? Like how did
Yeah.
that become the decision?
It was just recommended. So when I talked to the tech about like, they ask like when you start drinking and like when do you drink? And they ask you all these questions. And they kind of like dig a little bit deeper. And that's when the tech was like, I think that your primary problem is unresolved trauma, and not like that you're an alcoholic. Like your alcohol problems come because you have unresolved trauma. And their recommendation was to go to inpatient. And I didn't want to. At the time, I wasn't talking to my mom or my dad. I was talking to my biological dad, who also went through very similar situations with his drinking in his 20s, and also went to inpatient for, I think he went for 6 months while he was in the Marine Corps. Maybe it was 3 months. But he was like, you need to go. This is going to be the best thing for you. And so I agreed to go.
And that's when we talked for the first time.
Yep.
And that's why I called you. I was like, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
It was a lot. And I mean, like, when I first started, like after my DUI, I was speaking out in public about like my DUI and what happened and whatnot, but like I never really talked about some of the things that I had been through in my life that have all like kind of just been shoved deep down, where I just was like, I'll deal with it later, or oh, it's not a big problem, I won't think about it, like I'll just do something else instead. But it all resurfaces at some point. I don't think I realized that until this came along. And yeah, it was difficult. The inpatient, it was a civilian hospital, but it was a program for military members. So they were pretty used to dealing with military. Um, I loved my therapist there. He was great.
What state was this in?
Utah.
It was in Utah?
Yeah.
Oh wow. And what was the facility like? What did
Ugh,
it look like?
it was like jail, honestly.
Oh, so it's very plain, very
Yeah, we couldn't have shoelaces on our shoes. If you
wow. So it's
wanted,
very controlled.
yeah, if you wanted to shave your legs, like a nurse or a tech had to stand there and watch you shave your legs. Like you couldn't, we didn't have our cell phones until like the last week I was there. They gave them to us 2 times a week for 30 minutes. But that was like to call your family and to pay bills. But we had a phone in the unit so we could call wherever we needed to during whatever times we were available. But therapy was, I mean, it's every day, all day long.
Is
Like,
that group therapy?
so yeah, we had group therapy every day, and it was different kinds of group therapy. And then we had two individual sessions a week with our therapist.
Wow.
So, and
How
it was
many these were these all active duty guard reserve people or are they past veterans, retirees?
they were all,
They're all serving.
yeah, yep.
Did you when you started hearing all these stories, were you like, man, these people are just like me, or were you like, man, these people are way worse than me? Like what was the vibe you got?
I felt like we all had very similar issues. A lot of us had issues with our parents, like childhood trauma. And then a lot of others, to include myself, military sexual trauma. Um, and for me, like that was not something that I opened up about until I went back to ADAP the second time. Like I'd never told anybody about what happened to me because I was so embarrassed and I was drunk. And I didn't want people to look at me like, oh, well, you were drunk. Like, that's, I
Yeah.
just, and it was so long ago. Like it was when I first joined the military and, you know, back then the way things were compared to now, like how, victims are treated very differently compared to back in the day. Like I didn't want to say anything back then. Like there was just
Right.
no reason for me to say anything, in my opinion, but really it ended up affecting me in the long run. And when I came back to Germany and started therapy with my therapist again, the first thing she told me was like, when I went into her, because I saw her for about a year, the year prior, and she was like, you barely scratched the surface. Like it was all superficial stuff that I talked about in therapy. And it wasn't until I came back from the trauma treatment where I actually started opening up and telling her what was going on with me. And she was like, you present well. Like, I wouldn't think you would have all this stuff going on. And I was just like, yeah, I'm I guess, kind of how I was raised, like you suck it up and continue. Like, it happened. There's nothing you can do about it. Move on. And that's what I did for all these years. And it finally just caught up to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is intense. And I hate it always breaks my heart hearing stories like that too. Like when you're young, you're new, someone
Yeah.
takes advantage of you because when we first joined, that was like out of control.
Yep.
Like it was like, I mean, it was just out of control. And it happened to like friends of mine, in like basic training. Because that's what we went through the Wild West of basic training times where like there were no rules,
Yeah.
you know.
It's
Um,
true.
and like I remember being in Guam and like a lot of the girls having to get sent back to testify.
Yeah.
Like that was a common thing to see with like new airman females. And my one of my great friends, I won't say her name or anything, um, but she was like to me like the perfect airman. Like she was gonna go do great things. And yeah, she was assaulted at her first base and it changed her whole life.
Yeah.
And I remember like thinking so highly of her and when she told me, I didn't even know what to say. It was just like what? Like that can't happen to you. Like it's heartbreaking.
For me, it was like I just pretended it never happened, you know?
Well,
And
that's how you coped with it.
like I told now that I think about it, I told my second husband about it. Um, and it was really awkward. And so I was like, I will never say anything about this ever again because it was so uncomfortable. It was just like, okay, well, this is weird. Like, what now?
Right. He
So I
wasn't
just,
he wasn't a good first person to tell. Damn.
yeah,
This place in Utah, for anyone that's like, there could be people listening to this episode that's like seeking this specifically out.
yeah,
And they might be on the fence about going to ADAPT and doing everything you did.
yeah.
So I was hoping you could like run us through like if you thought it was worth it, and what benefits or insights you got out of that experience.
Yeah, I definitely think it was helpful. So this is my second time going through ADAPT. So the first time I went through ADAPT, like I was very interested in learning because I didn't understand like there's so many facts about, being an alcoholic and what alcoholism is. And like if you have one family member, like you're, I don't know, 20%, um, like 20% more whatever to become an
Like likely
alcoholic.
to be an
Yeah.
addict. Right.
And then if you have two people in your family, then it's like tripled. Like
Hmm.
that threw me off when I read that. I was like, whoa, like if I would have known this, like maybe 10 years ago, I would have slowed down, like I just
Hmm.
didn't know the facts. So I was very interested in learning. Um, ADAP also does like one-on-one counseling with an ADAP technician. And then you do group therapy sessions, like group alcohol sessions about like, if someone is pressuring you to drink, how do you tell them no? Like those kinds of scenarios. So um, I thought it was beneficial because everyone I'm around typically is a drinker. So for me, I kind of learned when to say no. Um, so like after my DUI, I would not get in the car with anybody that had alcohol. If I drank, I would not drive. I carried a breathalyzer on my keychain. Um, and if any of my friends were at my house and drank, I made them blow into it before they left. And I'm sure they hated it. But I was so terrified that it was going to happen to someone else that I wanted to make sure I did everything in my power to prevent it. Um, and then going to this place in Utah, I thought it was great. I actually was given multiple locations. So there was a place in Phoenix, a place in Utah, and a place in Texas. And those were the top three that were recommended. And the one I went to was a women's program. So they had a men's section and a women's section. And I just thought it was easier than having like a co-ed type of group. I felt more comfortable sharing what was going on with me. Um, but it was really hard. The homework assignments were hard. Like I had to write a letter to my younger self. And that was like my first assignment. And I had to read it out loud in front of everyone. And I was just bawling. Um,
Do you still have that letter?
I do. It's actually on my Facebook.
Really?
Uh, yeah, I posted it on there probably right after I got out. Um, I'll send it to you. I'll look for it. But yeah, I had to write. That was my very first assignment, and I was just like, "Are you serious right now?" And I have to read this out loud. Like,
What a unique experience too, where like you're not doing anything else but focusing on you.
yeah,
Like that's not a thing we ever get to do in the military.
it was so hard. Um, you get like 10-minute breaks in between each like section of the day or whatever. And then at night you get free time, but you're supposed to be in bed by like 10 o'clock. Um, And I literally struggled to write stuff that was nice about myself. Like, it was very, very hard. Like, I had to ask for help, like from the people in the program, like on some of the homework assignments. So I was like, I just don't know how to reframe my thought. And they're like, well, you're this, you're that, you're that. And I was like, oh, you're right, I am. But like, I couldn't say those things about myself, especially because I was dealing with so much in such a short period of time. Like, I didn't want to leave at the 28th day. I was like, I have a lot of shit to like unpack here. But they were like, you'll go back and you'll go back into therapy and you work with it, you work with your therapist on it. And because I was so open the second time around, I feel like I learned so much more about myself, and I quit drinking. So I think because I quit drinking, that has helped me tremendously. I'm almost 8 months sober. So
Well, congrats to you.
thanks.
I'm super proud of you.
It was a difficult decision, and it's hard. Like, being in the military, everything is revolved around drinking, like promotion party. There's all these little things that you celebrate, you drink, or you're frustrated, you have a bad day, you're going to have a drink. Like, you don't realize how much it actually affects you until you're kind of like at your lowest point.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was very beneficial. I think I'm a happier person. It's been very hard to tell people like, no, I'm not going to go places because I don't want to make my friends upset, but also like, I'm not going to go to a wine bar where there's no food and just wine and hang out. Like
The
not,
entire concept is to drink.
yeah, like, no,
I mean, and it's so common in our culture, in the military culture, that if you don't drink, you're the weirdo.
yeah.
So like you might lose friends because
Yeah,
like
it's weird when people ask like why I don't drink. Then I'm like, well, funny you ask. I have drinking problem.
like
Like,
like how much time you got?
I,
Um,
I don't-
I
it's
did lose some friends when I stopped. And
yeah,
I think it's the people that they wanted to stop too, you know, and they don't want to be reminded of they could be doing something wrong, right?
yeah,
Like so seeing you is like a reminder of what they wish they could do. So I lost a few friends from that.
yeah,
And because I was awkward, like I had to figure out how to not be awkward. Like
yeah,
I was relying on drinking for all my confidence, all my
yeah,
energy, all of that. And then to not have it, it was like, well, what the hell do I say? Like, what do I
yeah,
like? I never stopped and thought about like my opinions on things or who I was, things I want to talk about. Like when you're
yeah.
drunk, you're on like autopilot.
Yeah, you just say whatever, do whatever, and nobody
Right.
cares.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I will drink again. Two of my sisters aren't drinking. They quit drinking as well. My youngest sister, she's 26, she's not not like I was. And, there's nothing wrong with it if you make sure you're not making dumb decisions. But I remember, like I left inpatient and I told you I wasn't talking to my parents. So I spent a night in Dallas, where I'm from, one night on my way back to Germany. And so I met up with my sisters and we had dinner. And then I was like, can someone take me to mom and dad's? And I went and told my parents that I'd gone to inpatient, and both of them were like, why? What happened? What's wrong? And I was like, like there's just a lot of things that I didn't deal with. And my mom just like, they didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like the initial reaction was just like, why? I don't understand. Like, why would you go do that?
I mean, think of their views as to not say it, right?
Yeah.
So for you to not only say it, but then ask for help, I mean, from their perspective, that's crazy. Like, why, you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be embarrassing. You're going to feel shameful. All that's enough for them and their views to that would cross the line. you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. I mean, I was home one year and I was like, do you guys understand what generational trauma is? And both of them were like, we don't care. We don't want to hear it. And it's just like, okay. So I will say now, it's been 8 months since I stopped drinking, 7 months since I went to inpatient. Um, you know, I talked to my mom earlier in the week and I was telling her that I was driving home from a doctor's appointment and I just had like this weird sense of like contentment. Like I'm happy. And I've never really felt that way before, right? Like not sober, not driving home from a doctor's appointment. I just felt happy and I felt good and I was like this is weird. Like and my mom was like, honestly, she had just been talking to someone else about, what had happened to me. And she was like, as much as the DUI sucked, she's like, I really think you needed that to happen for you to really see what was going on and for you to get some help. And she told me like how proud she was of me for going and, how much she sees a difference in me. And that meant a lot because my parents, they talk about stuff that they're proud of, which is like, oh, my daughter's in the Air Force for 20 years, like all these things that people can see, but never really about like feelings or emotions. Like we didn't grow up talking about stuff like that. So it was nice to hear that from my mom.
Damn, you earned that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. We've been on a whirlwind of a conversation. My God.
Yeah. It's a lot.
That was a lot. We've been talking for 2 hours. It's
That's wild.
12:20 where I'm at, 12:20 in the morning.
Well, it's 7:19 in the morning here.
So you're just getting your day started, and I'm like, I need to go to bed.
Yeah.
But
I'm
Amanda,
probably
I do want to tell you, I think you're basically a superhero. Um, I mean, even like I've can relate with a lot of your trauma. Um, and wow, you were not at a good starting line when you went about your adult life,
no.
and you had to learn the hard way. You had to take that path where it's trial and error, and there's a lot of errors. But you're very resilient. Like you're very tough. Most of those things, if even one of those things happen to someone, they might be in worse shape than you. Yet collectively, with all these things that you've dealt with, like you're still going, like you haven't quit. And I think that says a lot about you. So I'm proud of you. Um, and I think a lot of people are going to be super inspired by your story because although you had a difficult start and a lot of painful realizations, close calls, embarrassing moments, all those things. Um, but you've instead of running away from you stopped and you faced them head on, and you are kicking ass. Like you're living your life, you're sober, you're content, you're happy,
Yeah.
and you've earned all that. And you went from the lowest of lows to you're about to retire after
Yeah.
20 years. Like you made it. You still made it to the finish line
Yeah.
despite all the obstacles.
Yeah.
So with that, Amanda, do you have any final thoughts for the listeners who stayed with us for the entire 2 hours?
Yeah, I would just say, if you even have like the tiniest little thought about needing help with alcohol or therapy, look into it. Don't be scared to go do it because, it's just going to come back around.
What would your advice be on trauma?
Deal with it. Deal with it. And know that you're gonna overcome it eventually. Like it may take some time, but stick with it.
You know that you said you learned a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
What if someone were to pursue being honest with themselves and willing to open up finally, what are some things you learned about yourself? Like what does that even look like?
Um, for me, it was knowing that I was always a different person when I drank. Um, I'm a massive extrovert. I'm very independent. Um, you know, I will be friends with anyone. I will talk to anyone. Um, but in those moments where I had trauma, like in the forefront of my mind, I was never actually me, you know? Um, and I just didn't feel good. I was never 100% me. And now that I've gone through a lot of this, like I know I'm not 100% healed, but I'm in the process of healing and it feels good. Like it just feels different.
Wow. It's like I mean, yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that and everything tonight. I mean, my God, I went on an emotional roller coaster of a journey of all things Amanda's life. And I mean, I kind of knew what to expect a little bit, but you still like surprised me. There's many twists and turns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm right there with you. I haven't been drinking for I think about 6 years now. So yeah, there's certain times where yeah, you're reminded why you drank in the first place. Like life doesn't get easier. You just get better at handling it.
Yeah.
But there are those moments where you'll be like, that's why I would drink. Like this moment, this situation.
I
Like,
hadn't
but
felt up until this week. Like it was last week when I went to England. Like it wasn't even like a bad thing that happened. It was just like me walking, kind of like a deja vu moment, like walking through the grocery store, and I was like, "Oh, a cider would be good right now." Like not that I even
hmm
wanted to drink, just because I was back in that space,
hmm
like that I was so used to doing that when I went into that grocery store. Like it was weird.
No, that's a real thing. I'm
Yeah.
going to my buddy Ronnie. He's retiring. I've known him since basic training. Best friend of mine. And as soon as like we set this trip up for me to go to his retirement, like my mind went straight to drinking because like he was in Guam with me, like when
Yeah.
all that started, like my mind went straight to partying.
Yeah. You know,
So
if you didn't know, um, one thing for people to know. So I get an injection every month. It's called Vivitrol, and it's to help stop your alcohol cravings.
really,
Um, yeah. So there's like actual medication out there for people that may need it. I also was prescribed Antabuse. And Antabuse it's a pill that you take every day. I'm not taking it yet, but it's a pill that you take every day. And if you touch alcohol, you get violently ill.
oh my God.
So I have my medication with me for when I retire because I'm going into unknown territory, and
hmm
I don't want to fall back into that space. And my doctor and inpatient was like, I think it would be beneficial for you to take these um, because you have a hard time saying no. And if you take them, it's a medication and it will make you sick. So I was like, absolutely, I will take them. And you can't even like, they say if alcohol even spills on you, you get sick. Yeah.
Whoa, that is wild.
Yeah. So, we were talking about something, we're talking about going through the grocery store and stuff. Like,
hmm
you have those dreams where like you wake up and think like, did I drink last night? Because I still have dreams like that where I'm like, was I drinking? And I have to like really focus on where I was at because it's that real of a dream.
hmm
So,
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, it's still
yeah.
a part of you forever. It doesn't just go away. You just, you really grow though when you're forced to, in your right, sober mind, think through things. Like that's the lessons learned. That's where your brain, rewires itself.
Yeah.
when when we were like drinking all that time, we were essentially putting all that on pause. We were basically going in a damn time capsule and not growing at all.
Absolutely.
Right. So, all right, Amanda, I want you to start your day, and I'm going to end my day because we're on two different parts of the world. But just want to thank you again for your transparency, your vulnerability. Um, I just think you're an incredible person. I think your story is going to inspire so many people, and we're all rooting for you. I'm definitely rooting for you. If you ever need anything, anyone to talk to, because I know how it is, please don't ever hesitate. Why is there fireworks going off?
I don't know. I was going to ask you that earlier. The thumbs up kept popping. There's another one.
What? Is someone else in here listening? Oh my God.
It's the UFOs.
Why is there three? It said there was three participants.
Maybe it's because of my phone and then my
Oh,
computer.
it is. Okay. For a second, I was like, damn, who is in this room? I'll just take that as a good sign because I started saying nice things and then fireworks went off. I'm like, I'm just gonna take that as a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yes, just want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing that story, Amanda. It's gonna help a lot of people searching for answers out there. So thank you so much for spending time with us and with me on the Hero Front podcast today. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. This was the hero's journey of Amanda Martinez, and we're out. All right, I'm about to end the meeting for all.
Okay.
Actually, before I do that, let me hit this.